3000.
What is doing? My name's Maloney. This is the 3000 podcast. I'm joined today by a club owner, hospitality leader, Dave Barrett, a.k.a. Dave from Laundry. Dave, thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
I've known you for quite a while, but I don't know much more than the hospitality stuff. So it'll be interesting to find out how somebody gets to be in the position that they own one of the, well, in my opinion, the coolest club in Melbourne. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it's it's definitely like some more history to it, I guess. Before that,
Yeah, and I know the SB stuff, but let's go back. So where did you grow up, and how did you get involved in hospitality in Melbourne?
Cool. So I guess it was probably the other way around. I kind of started out in running events. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Portland, in country Victoria,
Fishing town.
Yeah, it's about southwest Victoria, about an hour from the South Australian border.
Yep.
Grew up there, and then I kind of started putting shows together when I was about 16. And
all ages gigs?
Yeah, all ages gigs. Pretty heavy kind of stuff. I think one of my first headliners was Damaged, and then we had Alchemist and a bunch of heavy metal kind of bands.
Yep.
And then about a year later, when I was about 17, I think we ran a show with Body Jar and Living End as the headliner. And it was kind of put together just before the Living End blew up, basically. So
mid-90s?
I guess so, yeah. It would have been mid-90s. So it was sort of the tour was put together, announced, and then the Living End kind of blew up. So we went from what I thought was probably going to be smallish show, local council's giving me a grant for it, we've put it together, it's kind of going to come in on a break-even kind of budget.
Yeah.
Ended up doing extremely well and selling out.
And you're still 16 at this time?
I was about 17 by then, I think.
Wow.
And then subsequently I moved to Melbourne when I was 17 and started working in kind of club nights. I was also, I was working in a supermarket, as the, bread and butter kind of thing, and doing a bit of school stuff. I went to NMIT next to the Tote for a little while and was studying music business management, but kind of didn't really finish it. I kind of, to be honest, I got a bit frustrated with it.
You're already in the industry.
Well, that was the thing. I kind of was just I've found this frustrating at times with face-to-face education over the years is I'm sometimes sitting in a room with someone that's doesn't quite seem as up to speed as things that I've already done.
You've got more experience than the teacher half the time.
That's definitely been an issue at times.
Yeah.
I think anyone that's been in, say, hospitality for a long time and then has forgotten to renew their RSA and had to go redo it, it's the most frustrating day of your life when, a bloke that used to work in a bottle shop or something's trying to tell you how to responsibly serve alcohol.
30 mils.
Yeah, when you potentially I think last time I did forget to redo it. I owned 5 venues at the time, and I'm just okay, cool, yeah.
Stamp
no
the
worries.
form, man.
Stamp the form. Did that. Moved to Melbourne. Started working across a whole bunch of club nights. Mostly again, still sort of indie punk kind of things.
Yeah. So Goo and that sort of thing? Is that what's happening?
I was around Goo, but I wasn't involved in it. We used to go there on a Thursday night.
So what were the other alternatives?
I was involved in, I was one of the promoters for a club night called Oxide that Chris O'Brien, who runs the touring division of Destroy All Lines, was involved in, and Francis Harrison, who's that band, The Resignators. They were the main guys that ran that night. So I was a past promoter kind of thing for them, DJ'd occasionally, stuff like that. And then occasionally would go back down to Portland and run a show. So we did a Mill and Collins show in Portland at the local town hall.
Internationals?
Yeah, we did Strife down there as well, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So yeah, that was cool. Kind of continued to do that. And then I guess just eventually kind of I was here for a while. I ended up moving back to Portland for a couple of years and working with in my family's business. And whilst I was doing that, I kind of got a job at the local pub, just pouring beers on a Friday, Saturday night. The Henty Hotel down there.
Is it still there?
That is still there, yeah. But like weirdly, again, Portland's one of those places where it's got, you know, like 4 pubs. They're all still pretty busy.
Hasn't been gentrified. Hasn't sort of been developed.
It's been gentrified a little bit, yeah, but not too much. Like less than I would have expected. Like there was actually a moment again, you know, during COVID where I was kind of like, one of them did come up for sale, and I was just like, this could be like, you know, gutted and refit like, you know, the Continental or something. It overlooks the bay, and it was like they wanted $2 million for it or something, and I was just like, this could be a thing. And then I kind of talked myself out of it.
Because of the fishing thing, though, there is a bit of tourism, and you've got people that obviously have boats, have money, so there is those,
100% there is. And my brother still lives there. He's a real estate agent. Him and my mum have got a big real estate agency down there, and they you know, do pretty well. And they're there and, you know, doing their thing. So like, like the potential was there, but it was just like, I was kind of like, nah, it's just a, you know, kind of pipe dreamy thing.
Pipe dream that you could have executed.
I could have executed, but like, you know, my parents would have loved it. But I was kind of like, I don't know if that's sort of, you know, the way I want to go.
Yep.
So just, kind of continued on. And then I guess like the thing that I guess like I kind of like came to the conclusion after a while was that, I guess like having a business kind of mind, I'd kind of gone, okay, like who's making money here and where's the money sort of in these businesses? And I kind of worked out pretty quickly that the venues were making predominantly the most money, and the promoters that were running events and shows and stuff in the venues were kind of the second tier of where the money was.
Less overheads though.
Well, yeah, exactly. Less overhead. So like, then I kind of, I guess I set about basically trying to like build a career where at some point I could be both of those roles in my own venue. And
have you taken it too?
The promoter, exactly. Yeah. So like I kind of went through the motions of working for a bunch of these hospo groups, and I was in the middle of all that kind of thing in the, I guess, the early 2000s where, you know, tourists came to town and started buying venues.
Walkabout, those guys came.
Yeah, well, like all of those guys.
Open Door pub group.
I worked for Open Door. Yeah. I worked for HMC, who were the predecessor to Open Door, and all of that's all part of AVC now.
That was without talking out of turn, because I work with some of those venues. Yeah. It's kind of the beginning of the end.
Yeah, look.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like it was, and I was only young, man. I was like 21.
And I kind of feel like that's, you know, maybe that's something, you know, we'll touch on like further into the discussion. Like it's like, I feel like that's, it kind of is the beginning of the end, and I feel like that's potentially like, unless there's some intervention in the industry,
like monopoly type scenario,
it's going to end up, like venues are going to end up like supermarket chains kind of thing, you know, and it's kind of heading that way. We are starting to see businesses like AVC essentially buying out tours, you know, and things like that, where they're just like, okay, cool, like we'll buy out the whole tour, you only play our venues throughout Australia. And, you know, with a group with 300 plus venues, like they're able to do that, and they're able to carry the overhead, and they can carry the insurance and things like that across the group. And they've got some venues that are making money and others that aren't, and all of that, you know. But, so I guess I went through the motions of working for a lot of those companies, and then that culminated eventually in, I went across to, got a role managing the SB in St Kilda. And then I kind of worked very hard there and hand in hand with the booking team, and kind of, you know, learn a lot from the owners there.
Was that Gavin back then doing that?
Gavin was like, the head booker. Had like Gavin Bosma, who's like Pool House Records now, and Indra Adams was there as well. And there was like a really solid team in there. Lucy Ribish was in there for a while. It's like a Revolver these days.
A lot of people that have gone on to do things.
Yeah, a lot of people have gone on to do cool things. Wally Kempton was there for a fair while as well, from the Meanies and his label, Cheer Squad. A lot of people that have gone on and done things. A lot of managers went through there, like, you know, with me and stuff like that. They've gone on to do other cool things as well.
For sure.
And then, the owners, you know, were there as well. And, you know, they were like, relatively supportive.
How long had they had it for?
They had it for like, quite a while. I mean, they were the ones that sold it to Sandhill Road, who then did that major renovation.
Yeah, because it was shut for a few years.
Yeah, so I went in, I kind of like came on board as they were doing that initial renovation where that kitchen area got done and the basement public bar, and then they built the Itchy Knee restaurant next door.
Yeah. Kind
of as the apartments were getting built. That was when I kind of came in. And then, yeah, like kind of worked hand in hand with everyone there. And I guess like just, I've always been good at like, you know, and even to this day with like when we're building venues and stuff these days with trades, like I pick up skill sets quite easily, I guess. And like, you know, I kind of will watch a chippy like do stuff, and then, you know, the next time we open a venue, I'll frame the bar myself, you know, like,
nice.
or, you know, like build walls and things like that. You know, when we built venues like George's Bar, you know, I like framed half of it, you know, bad decisions. Like I, you know, did a lot of the work on the construction of the bar and everything. And when we renovated laundry during COVID as well, working with some really great trades and stuff like that too. But, you know, I kind of picked these things up.
Not afraid to get on the tools.
No. So I guess the same thing happened with booking. You know, I had an understanding of it, and I'd booked acts and I'd put together events and, you know, one-off things. And then like, yeah, I ended up making a lot of contacts and, you know, learning a lot more about it in that time at the SB.
For sure. So just to follow a timeline, what year are we talking now?
I guess like I was at the SB for, it feels like I was there for like 6-7 years, I think. Like it might have been a bit less.
Early mid-2000s.
Yeah, up to about 2010. So yeah, it was sort of like, or maybe it was like, it might have been less than that. It felt like it was that long, but it might have been, you know, like 4 years or something. But
and we're just for people that don't understand, and maybe people that haven't been in Melbourne for long enough, the SB that we know now is very different to the SB then, which there was bikies on the door. Yeah. Well, there was
There's some big boys on the door.
Big boys on the door. There was it was not the place that it is now where people take photos walking down the stairs.
No, it was definitely a different venue. It was very, very live music focused, very event focused.
And it was grimy and dirty.
And it was grimy and dirty, yeah.
But that was its appeal.
And it was its appeal. Like, you know, and it was like, you know, it was a really good venue at the time, you know. We ran some really great events there while I was there. And, you know, like I had someone say to me the other day who's like, you know, yeah, quite a big tour promoter, that like that was the peak of the venue. He's like, you know, when Gavin Purdy was the booker and you were the venue manager and like that team was all there, like, you know, that was the peak of that venue. You know, that was all those big hip hop shows people that are, I guess, our age group know the venue for. The beginning of all the kind of like trap EDM kind of stuff, and a lot of that ran through there and then ended up continuing across to Laundry. And a lot of those, like mid-level acts all sort of moved when I moved, I guess, to Laundry, all the mid-level internationals. The SB managed to keep a lot of the bigger stuff, like, because they had the capacity and the finance, I guess, to do that. But, like, yeah, a lot of the mid-level stuff just all kind of moved with me.
Also, at that time, groups, acts, were keen to sort of play at the SB on a Wednesday for basically nothing, so they could kind of, it was almost like a rehearsal, then they'd tour. And that would happen a lot.
Yeah, look, that happened a lot. And then there was a lot of little like side deals and things. And I was like part of those. I mean, I did some of them myself, you know. I was like, you know, I mean, that's sort of somewhere where I like probably got myself into trouble towards the end of my time there, where I was doing, I was touring things on the side, you know. I had a Talib Kweli Jean Grey tour in the market that was at the Prince at the same time as I was managing the SB.
Conflict of interest.
Which was a bit of a conflict of interest, but it was sort of, I guess, like in my head, I was kind of like moving out of that business. I just hadn't probably said anything at that stage. And I'd been already looking for venues to buy. And I had when I gave my notice, I'd bought a venue in the city, and then that sale ended up falling through. So I just kind of focused on like the touring stuff for a while.
Can you tell us what venue that was?
I'd bought Ding Dong.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then it was, I'd bought it with some other partners.
Because that had a crazy license, didn't it? Like a really late license.
It had like a 5 a.m. license. And so, I'd bought that venue. Well, I'd done a deal to buy that venue with some other guys. And then when all the paperwork came through, there was this like demolition clause in it where basically like the landlord could kind of give you X amount of notice.
And it is gone now, isn't it?
The building's still there. Yeah.
But the license, it's not.
I think it's part of the beer hall thing that's downstairs now.
Oh, okay.
So I think like the building caught on fire, I think at one point. You know, it's had a pretty checkered kind of history. It's had a lot of, some interesting kind of ownership through it and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think there was some pretty interesting stories on the back end with, like one of the owners from Cherry previously that then opened that. And, you know, there's a bit of, interesting kind of stuff going on there, I think. But, that demolition clause in there kind of scared off my investors. So they kind of pulled the pin on it. So that deal fell apart. And then I kind of kept on the lookout. I did a bunch of tour management in that time for Soundwave, Big Day Out, and then some of the other festivals that AJ put on.
Yeah. Let's not skim past that stuff though, because there's some interesting stuff in there. So when you say Big Day Out Soundwave, right? Yeah. Big Day Out, I think it finished in what year, 2015 or something?
Yeah, I think that was the last one. I did it. So I tour managed Mac Miller on that tour.
There you go.
So it was like 20.
Was he chill?
Mac Miller was, he
would have been early 20, like 21 probably, or something?
Yeah. He was like drinking a lot and taking a lot of, substances, but he was great. Like, he was great to work with, and his team was, like, amazing. Yeah, he had, like, a great team. We were, like, that run was, like, 27 days. And there is a funny story from that where he, like, he convinced himself that housekeeping had stolen his Rolex in New Zealand. And
too many substances?
Possibly, but I think it turned out that it was still in the hotel, but we didn't work this out until we got, I think, to Gold Coast maybe.
And this is your problem? When something like this? No. But when there's a tour and is that
we just kind of like, I guess like the thing is with me, being from my background of like venue management and things like that, I kind of was just like, oh, look, we'll sort it out, so between his American tour manager and myself, we ended up basically eventually working out that the watch was still at the hotel.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful gold Rolex presidential with a full diamond face on it.
We're talking
very
like
expensive
100K
watch.
or something.
Probably something like that. It was enough that when I got to Sydney, we had a day off. I flew to Auckland at 7 a.m. in the morning and flew back from Auckland at 7 o'clock at night. I made sure I wore the watch on the way back so no one asked any questions about
Amazing.
it. But I flew back into New Zealand and then went to the hotel, got the watch, grabbed a burger, went back to the airport, got back on a flight and was back, in Sydney. It was 12 hours later.
Amazing. Was Mac appreciative?
Yeah, for sure. And it ended up being a really cool thing. Like, his birthday was one day off my birthday. So we ended up kind of having this I think we're on the Gold Coast, when it was my birthday, and, I had this cake arrive at my room and
awesome.
All that. And then I think the night after we ended up, we kind of had a party for him at Strike on the Gold Coast. I ended up, getting them to close the venue down for it on a Sunday night because we were concerned about being the Gold Coast that whether people were actually going to be able to get into the venue as far as a lot of the artists that were, heavily tattooed and stuff like that on that.
That's something we don't have here in Melbourne, but on the Gold Coast and even in Adelaide, I think.
Yeah, it's potential. Yeah, I haven't really experienced it in Adelaide, but I've definitely personally experienced it on the Gold Coast.
It's a weird because it's not a law, it's just a policy.
It's just a policy, and it's been a policy for a really long time. I think the first time I ever went to the Gold Coast, I was in my 20s or something, and I don't even I think I just had sleeves maybe. I didn't even have hand tattoos or neck tattoos or my head or anything at that point. And they were just my partner and I rocked up to a venue and they were just you can go in, but you're going to need to put a shirt on. And I'm like, oh, I don't have a shirt. And they're like, oh no, we'll lend you a shirt kind of thing. And I was just
just pull out a bin full of shirts.
It was just my partner was just nah, stuff this, we'll just go somewhere else, But yeah, like, so that was, the concern there. So I basically convinced them to like shut the venue down, and I was just like, oh, we'll bring our own DJ and all that. The DJ we bought was Diplo.
Amazing.
You know, and yeah, we just like, we had this big party for him, and I organised some like local guys with some like lowriders and stuff to pick, as everyone was staying like out of town at the RACV
country
resort,
club thing.
country club thing up there. So yeah, we like brought everyone in, and like had this. Yeah, it was cool. Like, so
For sure.
yeah, did that. Did a couple of runs on I think like Harvest Festival maybe ran for 2 years, like under AJ. And then did a whole bunch of sound waves. With like the first sound wave I did was like I think with Third Eye Blind, which was like horrific.
What do they do after they play Semi-Charmed live?
I don't know. I was like, I was too busy with the crew, like wanting to like, the cruise rider was bigger than the bands because like they had to be like drunk to deal with them. And then like the singer guy, because the singer and the drummer are the only actual members of the original band. Everyone else is hired in.
Yeah.
And the singer was like making the girl that was doing like lights and stuff, like come to his room and like fold all his clothes up and pack his bags for him and stuff. It was like part of her job, and it was just like, whoa, okay.
Jesus.
And they were like funny because they were like, apparently they had some things to say about me, and it was like my first run on that tour, and then that got kind of raised with me as a bit of maybe a performance issue or whatever. And then we had a thing with them in Sydney where like the bigger bosses ended up somehow like having an interaction with them, and they were like painful, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh yeah, no, it's all good. Like it was just like, yeah, we get it. We get what's going on here. And then from then on, I seemed to get a better run with that tour where I like got either like some good acts, like the year they had Cypress Hill, like they gave me Cypress Hill because they were like, oh, you're the hip hop guy, like, you know, deal with Cypress Hill.
Did you have to source some stuff for Cypress Hill?
Yeah, that happened. There's a video on YouTube somewhere with me in a van with the guys, like going on about how the green in the country wasn't too good at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
even though they're going straight green, it's still not up to standard.
It wasn't at the time for them, I think. I think it was like a lot of that was that kind of, again, that time period where America had kind of like gone semi-legal with things. There was a lot of dispensaries. There was a lot of like hydro stuff starting to like really be a big thing over there. So the quality of things had increased significantly where that hadn't quite happened here yet.
Yeah.
You know, you're still probably having a lot of stuff, you know, like grown in the, you know, grow houses and like, you know, illegally and in the bush and stuff like that. So but that was really cool with them. And then like dealt with some other, I guess sort of more pain in the ass kind of problematic acts for them on subsequent kind of tours, which was
so with these scenarios, they would literally say, this group, this act, this is yours, and then so everyone has their own kind of not manager, sorry?
Their own like rep, so they have like a tour rep from the festival. And then in later cases, like I think like the last one or two sound waves, some of us would end up with just like basically a package. You know, I'd have like, I remember like one of the years I was like dealing with side shows for like I think I did Ministry and like I did their side shows. I think like a couple other bands, and then you know I'd have like 4 or 5 acts on the festival that I'd have to make sure they were getting to stage and they were like getting flights and stuff. I think particularly that year that was the year that they did the 2-day festival.
Yep.
And there was chartered flights kind of like going backwards and forwards between cities. A lot of us ended up with basically like a whole package of acts, and we're kind of responsible for making sure that they were like making those chartered flights, getting to the other city, and then like I just was in Melbourne for 2 days, and then like maybe skipped Adelaide and was in Perth for 2 days or like whatever.
Yeah.
So like
logistically, I can't even get my head around the back end of like how that stuff would work with amps, with like there's a lot to fucking think about.
It's just massive teams, and there's like people that are like specializing in like everything, and you like in an organization like that, you've got some some really brilliant, like Darren Hawthorne, who ran all the tour management for like that festival and still does for most of the Destroyer Lines festivals and a bunch of other big festivals. Like, the guy's a genius at like tour management logistics and just gets it and like just gets it done, you know, like, and then like, and that's kind of was the gist with some of the other people, you know, like, and I think that's why I like the time that I was with that team kind of, fitted in with that as well. Cause I'm kind of the same. I just get things done. Yeah. You know, like even now with like, you know, with laundry and like running some of the events that we run there and like, you know, the things that are classed as kind of high risk, I guess, and acts that, you know, I pitched an act that played with us the other week to another venue the other day for an album tour, and they were just like, no. Like, and I'm like, I'll come in and like brief your security and like run the door with them if you want, like if you're going to do the event. And I was just like, no, we're not touching it. Like,
a lot of people are like that. A lot of venues just don't want the headache. We'll continue on your journey, but just while we're talking about festivals, where do you think the state of the country's festivals are? Obviously, if Splendour is pulling the pin early, it's a fucking tough market for everybody.
Yeah. Look, the problem with festivals at the moment and international touring in general is the big players in the market at the moment. Like, TEG, AEG, and Live Nation.
So these aren't Australian companies.
These are not Australian companies.
So we're not hating on the Aussie guys.
No, they're international companies that own or control a lot of venues, festivals, touring internationally.
They're the AVC of the world touring.
Kind of, yeah. Like, you know, but like, you know, like Live Nation are like, they're a massive company, you know, like TEG, a massive company, AEG, you know, like they got control of festivals, stadiums, brands, you know, like, you know, brands like Coachella and things like that, you know, with some of those, one of those companies.
That shit,
yeah. Like, you know, and like they're pushing really hard into this market. They're taking on a lot of big venues, you know, like Live Nation have, you know, just in Melbourne have got now, you know, Palais Theatre, they've got control of Festival Hall. You know, eventually that will like push out. There has also, I've heard, been discussion about some of those venue groups like potentially AVC being purchased by some of these companies as well, which I personally like, having been in both sides of the industry with like hospo and like live music, I don't really see that happening at the moment because I just don't think those groups they hold too many other kinds of venues, and none of these companies are going to want to like, they might want the Espy, but they don't want the Robe Hotel. You know what I mean? You know, so it's just kind of like, you know, and that happened even when AVC took over, say, like Open Door Pub Company, which was like, you know, the guys that had Walkabout in the UK. They ditched like all their nightclub venues, like, you know, Casey's and like Star Bar and, you know, a few other venues. And like the Palace and things like that as soon as they took over that group, because they were just like...
They wanted the Metro.
We know how to run pubs, but we don't know how to run nightclubs. So, you know, Metro went, Star Bar went.
I was working for Metro at that time.
Casey's went. The Depot, which is now like the Precinct. They ditched all those kind of venues because they were just like, we know how to do like food and beverage and like, you know, light entertainment or whatever, but like, we don't know how to do that stuff. So, you know, they were like smart to ditch that. So that's kind of like, as much as I've heard some whispers and things about some of these big companies, like talking to some of these other, you know, like hospitality companies in this territory, I don't really see it because it's just like, they would just have to like, they would basically like, if you bought something like AVC and you took over 325 odd venues, you'd want to ditch 300 of them, you know, because there's only 25 of them that are any good to like some of these big kind of entertainment companies.
And the thing is, they're not going to sell them back to Joe Blow. No. You know, they're going
to sell them to another big company, you know, like, or they're going to like walk out of them, which is what happened with like, you know, Colonial Leisure with some of the venues like Penny Black, you know, they bought it for a record amount of money from 100 Burgers Group and then they like handed it back to them a few years later, you know. Or the Robert Burns on Smith Street, you know, they bought that, did an epic renovation, relaunched it, didn't really work, and then they just sold it to another dude. And the tote the first time was you know, big example of that, you know, like he went in, bought the freehold, sold the freehold to the, you know, bar open guys for less than what he paid for it a few months later because there was so much kind of public uproar. You know,
it's an interesting space, that whole thing. And like people don't understand, people that love venues that aren't in hospitality don't understand what goes on behind the scenes to keep those venues open, you know?
No, they don't. And it's like, and it's been a funny thing, like, even in, say, like Laundry coming up to June, it'll be like 13 years that like I've had that venue. It's like, you know, it used to be a bit of a running joke sometimes with even like, you know, suppliers and trades. You know, you get the guy from like a pest control company come in and be like, oh, you guys only open like 3 nights a week or whatever. It's like, what do you do the rest of the week? And I'd be like, oh, we sit around and hope and pray that we'll be busy. You know, it's just like, we're like doing marketing, we're booking events, we're like doing artwork, we're like putting up posters. Like when we first opened Laundry, literally like I'd go in the morning and like clean from the day before. I had a photocopier under the stairs with photocopy posters, and I'd walk all around the area and like stick posters up half the day and then go back and set the bar up a bit, and then I'd maybe go to the gym for a little bit and grab dinner, and then I'd go back and open. And like, you know, at the time that we first opened, like the venue manager in there and myself had both had our security licenses, and we'd probably put like one mate on that had a security license, and like one of us would be signed on as a guard and one would be the manager, and then like you'd have the second guy signed on to make the license conditions.
For sure. Man, the whole time, like I was sort of DJing there on and off for a couple of years. Every single time, I think every single time, you were on the door there.
Yeah.
Like even one day you were wearing something a bit different. I'm like, what's going on? You're like, I've been at a mate's wedding, but I'm still here on the door. So to your credit, man, you were fucking hands on.
Yeah. I literally did that like 2 weeks ago on the Saturday. I was like at a friend's wedding during the day and rocked up to the first like of the 2 band from New South Wales shows in a full like 3-piece suit, and the boys were just like, what's going on? And I was just like, I legit just came from a wedding, like give me 5, I'm just gonna like run upstairs, get changed into like normal people clothes, and I'll come down and we'll like run this meet and greet together, you know, like
that's it. But that's it, man. You can't question your passion, and you're still there, and you still put in the hard yards, where a lot of owners would sit back and watch the cameras and go, fuck, no, I don't need to be there. But so that's a credit to you, man.
Yeah, like, I mean, to be honest, I think like at the peak of me not being there was probably got to a point where I like had 1 or 2 managers in there, and I'd maybe like, come in after it was open and leave before it was closed, you know, like, but also at that time I was kind of also overseeing like 3 venues on the street because I had George's Bar, Laundry, and Bad Decisions. So I was kind of like, running up and down the street a lot of the night as well.
Before we get to the venue ownership stuff, still with the touring and that sort of thing, I'm kind of the mindset that this dual bill big stadium thing is probably the future because the infrastructure's there. Say like you've got Post Malone, Chili Peppers, right?
Yep.
So you're getting 2 slices of demographic that might cross over, almost not quite. But you've got kids going for Post Malone, you've got parents going for Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Together they could sell out Marvel. By themselves they can't. The infrastructure's there. Yeah. Do you think that's like the future of stuff?
I think the mixed bill stuff is definitely going to. I think we're going to see more and more of it. Like, and we're starting to see it creep now into the mid-level where you got like Ocean Sleeper has got Little Lotus as the main support, and then Little Lotus is doing a second show as like a headline rap show at Laundry the day after. I think we're going to start like seeing
side shows,
more
kind of
that sort of stuff. Where the other bands like or put maybe the headliners or whatever trying to just make things a bit more interesting for people as well, and just kind of diversify things a little bit. And I think that's like, I guess like we do seem to be moving into a market where I guess for want of a better thing, like people are kind of wanting more and more of an experience. I mean, it's definitely something that we've seen, you know, and which again we can go into further later, but like we've seen a bit of a slip in that kind of like week in, week out trade where like, you know, kids don't really seem to kind of go to like, you know, somewhere like say Laundry on a like every Friday, every Saturday downstairs for the same DJs playing the same kind of music every week. Like that's seems like it's kind of like it's become a bit of a thing of the past in the last few months.
Social media is a big part of that, I think.
Yeah.
I personally think, because even in the early days of like that 2000, social media's around, but it's still not much of a thing. So people still want to go, they want to be seen, they know where their friends are going to go. Now people go, they get their little social media hit, they Instagram their stuff, and then they're on to the next thing.
Yep.
And that, I think, is because the promoter thing, like, you know, when people used to be promoters, club promoters, you get your friends, you get some drink cards, that's done.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's partly done. It's still a thing. I mean, but like, even back in the day, like, you know, a club night or a venue, like, for the most part, unless people were there for a specific reason, you kind of had about a, like, 45-minute shelf life on human beings turning over in a venue generally anyway. Most people that were just kind of, like, out for the night and just going out for drinks and stuff, typically it'd stay in a venue for about 45 minutes. Unless they were there for like a birthday or they're there for like a specific gig or something like that. You know, people kind of float in, float out, and you just turn over the room every hour or so kind of thing.
Not when there's a cover charge, though, because that kind of tends to hold people, don't you think?
They're
invested?
There was probably like, I think that's like, yeah, again, like there was probably a point where maybe that was a thing, but it's definitely not as much anymore now. People will like happily these days seem like they'll pay $20 to just go in somewhere, go, I'm not really feeling it after like 20 minutes, and then like just dip somewhere else and like pay another $20 to get in somewhere else. They're not really like as fussed about that anymore. I think like that income's like a little bit disposable at the moment. Like if they're not enjoying somewhere, they're not going to just stay there just because they paid to get in. You know, like they're not as committed with that. I think the big thing with social media, and I think with COVID, that was like a big shift in like people in general, particularly from like 18 to 23, is like, you know, for want of a better thing, like they just don't really have like that community and like social network around them.
It's online.
Yeah, it's online, and especially like, you know, we see it particularly more with like, I guess like, I don't know, like, yeah, I can't think of the best way to like kind of describe that crowd, but I guess like we see with some kind of like ethnic groups and stuff, there's still big amounts of like community around it. And we also see it with certain like segments of the scene, you know, like we do a lot of stuff at Laundry with like around like, you know, drill and gutter rap and Aussie hip hop kind of stuff, and that some of that sort of socioeconomic kind of like community, like they stick together and they go to the same places and they want to go to the same events and stuff like that. We sort of see it as well in like other ethnic groups, you know, when we're running like, you know, events that are like, you know, we've run some events with promoters as say like, you know, marketing to like a Filipino audience or like a, you know, East Asian audience or an Asian audience or a like, you know, kind of Islander crowd, stuff like that. You know, those groups stick together, but a lot of other ones kind of don't. I think like a lot of communities and like ethnic groups and social groups that have maybe more established in Australia, you know, or like, you know, of that, like, you know, English, Irish kind of descent that have, you know, like they're generationally been here for a long time. A lot of them don't seem to have a lot of like kind of community around them and like big friend groups as much anymore. We're seeing them kind of, like come out with like, you know, you're like, oh, it's your birthday. And they're like, yeah, we're bringing like 2 friends or 1 friend or like whatever, you know. And that's definitely been a big shift from people that I think are like late 20s into their 30s and our age groups and stuff like that. And I think it's something that probably it dwindles again when you do get into your 40s and stuff. You start being a bit more decisive about who your friends are or like what your connections are, you know, whether it's kids or whether it's things that you're into or like whatever. But
there's a big shift that happened in the mid 2010s called Tinder, right?
Yes.
And that definitely plays a part with people going out because there was obviously online dating, but like no one was doing it. All of a sudden everyone had it in their pocket, and that changed the game, I think, for nightclubs.
100% it did, because it's just like, you know, I guess like when, you know, in our age group, when you went out, you know, you were going out, you were talking to people, you were socializing, you know, part of that was eventually to try and, you know, find a partner and get into a relationship and like, you know, build on that, you know, whereas now it's, I think, like for younger kids, like a lot of things have just got so much more just generally disposable, you know, like we're in this age of, like Tinder and TikTok and IG and stuff like that. And things are just like, the wheels are spinning really quickly.
Yeah.
And, like people are just kind of, they're in this cycle of kind of like doing that stuff, pushing through that, getting up, going to work, putting stuff on tick, as well, with like, Afterpay and Zip and credit cards and stuff like that. And, they're going to work to pay that off. And then they're like going on their holidays for their 4 weeks of the year. And like, and again, I think after COVID, like some of those things have become a bit more big ticket items as well. People are like, I'm seeing a lot more people kind of going like, oh, I'm going to Europe for like a month or 2 months or things like that. These were things like when we were younger, like, you didn't see that till someone had, maybe they'd like stayed at a job for 10 years or something. And then they were like, oh, I'm going to take my month of long service leave off and go overseas for a year. And you're in your 30s by then or something because you'd stayed in a role from your 20s or whatever.
Yeah. I think social media plays a big part in that because people, they want to go to Europe because there's a bit of content there for a month. You know what I mean?
True.
It's also the same kind of idea with people coming in and you say that they're not that invested in a venue. They'll be there for 20 minutes. They'll go because they've got their Snapchat stories and they've got their shit and woo, we're having shots, we're doing this, and then they're on to the next.
Yeah. And that's true as well, I guess. Like, and they're just like, but I think also like, we lost during those sort of COVID years of like, different styles of service and things, just that like, particularly a venue like Laundry that was like very much built like on word of mouth and community, it was just like, like people went there because someone said to go there. We were never like a venue that like, traditionally like did a lot of overt kind of marketing or anything. No. Any marketing that we did was always kind of quite passive or just informative or a bit cheeky. We'd kind of like, we'd run a whole bunch of posters with, like party with the best, F the rest or like, things like that. And just... we're kind of a bit smart-assy about things, but like it wasn't kind of like, come here on Friday night and Saturday night and this is what's on, like it was just like people just knew the venue, like and knew that was the spot to go if you liked that kind of music. And it just kind of, just continually built off that.
For sure. And that's one thing that I think with Laundry, it was so by the time you got there, I know before you, it did a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But you focused just purely on the hip-hop stuff.
Yeah.
Where a lot of other venues would be like, we do hip-hop on Friday night and it'll be kind of cheesy. And then we might do a gig here, but then it's going to be commercial music. People knew that if they're into that music, they could go there. Any night that it was open, you're going to get a variation of that.
Yeah. And I guess that was the thing for a really long time that we, for probably the, first, 10, 11 years of the venue, we like, other than, the odd little foray off into things, but I guess some of that was like also like my upbringing and things like that, like I grew up in a time when, we were like seeing things like, the Judgment Night soundtrack and you saw like rappers and heavy music kind of mesh together. When I was a kid, like we listened to both, you'd go and see, you'd be listening to like Pantera and like Megadeth and things like that, but you were also listening to Public Enemy, you know, and like NWA and stuff like that. Some of that did bleed through a little bit in Laundry in the early days where we were doing some like, heavier kind of bands and stuff some nights, but predominantly hip hop.
Yeah.
Or things that were kind of closely associated, like dance hall or like trap kind of stuff or, kind of, when some of that stuff came through.
To use Heater's least favourite word, it was urban.
Yeah, it was.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It definitely was. Yeah, it was definitely like, I guess like even those kids that were like playing there sometimes, in hardcore bands and stuff like that, we're all the same people. We all kind of came from the same background and all of that. It was just like, some people were like, more into rap than they were into heavier stuff or vice versa, like...
So when you first open Laundry, you're there, for the first time it's your own venue. It's kind of daunting. You're like, fuck, you start to realise when I'm the venue manager, I don't have to worry about these overheads now. I've got to worry about all this stuff. Was there a moment where you're like, this is a lot, man? Was it a wake-up call? You pretty much knew what you're in for?
I think I kind of knew what I was in for. And I think... when we first opened the venue as well, like I was very like into it, it was like, there was a lot of energy there. There was a lot of like, just, this is what I've been like striving for all along and trying to like get to. So like, yeah, the early nights, like, the early mornings through to the late nights, the working every day, like trying to like go away and subsidize, points in time where maybe the business wasn't doing that well by doing tours or tour managing things for other people and bringing in that extra cash to kind of keep things afloat. And all of that, like it didn't really matter. Like, as it was just like, we're just getting this done, because I was just like, super just like into it, and the energy just came from that. And, like I drew on my superpower of ADHD as well to like, just kind of like push through as well, and it was just, it was just a thing. And those like first few years just like whipped by so quickly as well,
One thing that even sounds funny to say now in 2024, but talking 10 years ago, like when I was there a lot, you were, and like I said, it seems funny to say now, but you guys were definitely early adopters to female DJs, especially in that hip hop R&B scene. Like now, you're probably 50-50 in the scene, right? There's a lot of female DJs. Laundry had a lot there, but there wasn't that many in the scene, man.
No, we were like...
Early adopters, early.
For sure. Look, I think we've been like, it's been a really unique venue all the way along, and there's things that I guess like, there's things that people like know about the venue or don't, or like, people tend to engage with certain elements of what we did or have done and are continuing to do that, like, I used to have a lot of funny conversations with people where they'd be like, oh, I didn't even know there was upstairs, or I didn't even know there was downstairs, or like, things like that, because they'd been to certain events and not really engaged with the entire venue because they didn't even know what was going on in the other level. So that kind of came through with, I guess, being an early adopter with a lot of like female DJs. And then we've also continually through the whole thing, like run a lot of like queer events and things like that as well, that like, I guess like, the main part of our crowd, or like, a lot of what the venue is always sort of known for, like mainstream wise, like, those people didn't even know that those events were going on or engaging with them or things like that as well.
Are they with external promoters, or are they?
They've been both, but like, the venue's always been like, like quite female forward and led all along. A lot of that had to do with my partner, Tina. She was, always like kind of pushing forward with a lot of things like events that, and she's still running events like Girls Club in there, which is a queer event, but like, all female DJs, all female clientele, or like female and female identifying. And like coming up with ideas like that. Girls to the Front, which is like an all-female like hip-hop rap event. We've got another one of them coming up soon. We're just trying to like put together the lineup at the moment. That was definitely like all her. But from my point of view as well, I guess like I've always kind of been of that perspective. And I guess like at a like, I mean, to take things back to I guess a bit of a like, shallow level or like a primary level, I guess like, from a marketing point of view and things like that, even with our office, has always been like predominantly a lot of female staff in there. There's been often times when we've even had 6 or 7 staff in the office, and I'm the only bloke in the office.
Yep.
At the end of the day, especially from the nightclub business point of view, like if you can appeal to a female clientele, you get everybody else.
Yeah.
The guys will follow, so, you're always going to like, kind of like, lead with that. And I guess like, I also kind of feel as well that like, generally like, the industry and especially like the hip hop kind of side of things was always, very like, it's always been quite male dominant. So, when the opportunity was there to kind of try and push that a different way, that was always, good as well.
For sure. And it's funny, like from my early nightclub days in the early 2000s, it was the same mantra then. Like we haven't really gone that far. If you look after the females, then everyone comes.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed in 20-something years.
No, exactly. You know, and it's been, you know, you've seen it with like, bands and, you know, artists and all that sort of stuff, and that have like focused in on that kind of clientele or whatever, and venues. It's just, like at the end of the day, if you've got that, but, you know, I think just generally it's just like, I don't know, personally, I find it a lot easier to work with like women in business in general anyway. And I think that like, I've maybe got, you know, I've got a strong perspective from being a male on like what that stuff will do, or will work. And then you're like having that, you know, other side of things like has been definitely really beneficial
for sure
for the business, you know, like you know, it's probably like, we're probably like 60-70% of our venue managers, particularly in laundry, have always been female.
Man, you've had a lot of turnover of venue managers. There was a period when I'd get there and you'd be like, Maloney, this is a new venue manager. I'm like, it was a big turnover.
I guess like, I mean, look, we have here and there, we've had some that stuck around for a long time, and then like we had a few that were turned over. There's probably also some periods as well where there was like, you know, 2 or 3 people in that kind of role, like an assistant manager and a venue manager or whatever, and some of them turned over as well.
Yep.
But I think over time, a lot of that too is probably just even like the way that, because as we said earlier, like I was always there, you know, and a long time, you know, a lot of the time Tina was there as well. We just essentially were running things, and some of these people maybe, didn't feel as empowered or you know, things like that, and to run the thing that, you know, they're kind of maybe more in a bar manager capacity, even though they had a venue manager title. And maybe that's, you know, that was part of it, or maybe they just, it wasn't, you know, for them, or...
they wanted the owner to be at home, and then you're like on the door, man.
Yeah, potentially.
They're used to different, they're used to,
Yeah, you know, I guess it's just one of those things, you know, it's just like, and it's also like, it also can be an environment too where like, you know, a venue like laundry, say that's open, you know, 2-3 nights a week, and you got someone that's there full time, you know, they got 2 or 3 days of the week where they're not maybe doing a lot, or they're having to do a lot of maintenance or like crappy kind of jobs that they maybe don't really want to do. They just want to like, they're like, oh, I'm a venue manager now, I just want to like float around on the weekends. And it's like, well, actually on a Wednesday, you're going to have to haul all the stock in and like repaint the bathrooms because they got tagged up on the weekend or things like that. And, you know, like maybe when some people get to that point in their career, they're like, oh man, that's like someone else's job, you know, whereas, like, you know, they were having to do some of that sort of stuff. And then, you know, on the weekends, the owners were around and active in the business and stuff that, you know, they maybe didn't feel like they had the agency to kind of like run their own show.
Totally. And that the tag in the toilets is a good segue, because you've always looked after all aspects of hip hop, whether it is your sort of like your guttery sort of graffiti stuff, right through to your, you know, mumble rap shit. You know what I mean? Like all of it across the board. So you've like you'll have gigs where you know the toilets are going to get hammered. Yeah. But you just go, well, fuck it. I like this stuff.
That's it. And then sometimes they unexpectedly do as well. You know, like we've kind of like, you know, something that, you know, we've done in the last probably like 6 to 12 months is like, you know, in the state the industry's in at the moment is like pivoted into doing a lot more stuff and not just doing hip hop. And we've been doing a lot more kind of like, you know, electronic stuff and drum and bass things and like, and other things as well as just hip hop gigs and bands and stuff. And, some of them have surprised me as well. You know, I've like walked into the bathroom after a drum and bass gig and been like, oh man, I didn't expect this. Like, cause they're like, they're trashed. Yeah. And then we have other shows, like we had the 2 sold out Band from New South Wales shows the other week, like nothing happened. There was not a tag in the venue essentially, you know, because the crowd was just like, you know, oh, we like respect the venue and like we don't want to like wreck things or like not be able to come to these shows or things like that in there. And I guess like some of those events too, you know, it's like even when I'm briefing security, you know, I think one of the lines from those shows that I said to the guards before we opened the doors was kind of like, you know, just treat everyone with respect, treat everyone like a human being unless they prove otherwise, essentially, you know, like, and that's kind of how we've always run things in there. And I guess like the initial part of things when we ran a lot of shows, and there was a lot of older heads around and stuff like that. We didn't really have a lot of damage or issues or incidents or anything. And in the last kind of couple of years, when we've sort of been doing a lot more of that, like guttery drill kind of stuff as well, there's that same sort of level of respect for the venue, because like a lot of other venues don't want to touch it.
That is the thing.
And they're just like, it's just like, we're the only people putting these shows on. Like, if you want to like see this kind of music and like see these performers that you like, show some respect to the venue and like spend money over the bar and like don't damage things and all of that, and then we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because no one else is going to want to do it.
I think you can deal with the tagging and stuff. Yeah. It's like smashing mirrors, kicking over the toilet, that sort of stuff. That's expensive, and that's where you're just like, fuck, come on, you know what I mean?
And I guess, it is, and it's like, and it's kind of relative as well. Like I guess like the first time in a long time that I kind of have like blown up at anybody was a few weeks ago at a gig that we had that wasn't very busy, and this kid got caught tagging the toilets, and there was probably like, 40 or 50 people upstairs at like a local rap gig, and it wasn't doing much over the bar. And I was just like, dude, like, I've been here all day. We're now going to have to be here till like 4 a.m. in the morning, like cleaning the toilets because you've like written your name all over the walls. Like, it's not even going to be there tomorrow. And then all you've done is like damage the place. And it just pissed me off. And it just like was like,
did he get it?
Crack. I don't know. He was back the next night for another gig that was at Bad Decisions. And he was very apologetic. Look, we just like, I guess like I'm trying to like, with these things, it's just like, hopefully like, they kind of like, it maybe does get through some people's like heads a little bit, and they like kind of go, oh yeah, actually, maybe I can like write my name on a wall outside somewhere, like some of it's crazy though. Like some of these kids are just like, it's just, that's like life for them, like it's just, they just don't, they don't even see it to be like an issue like that, like, and I guess like, I mean, I sort of see it from a point of view, I guess, as like, see property damage, I guess, as a like, there's different levels to it or whatever. Like, and I guess like, doesn't fuss me that someone's like tagged outside of someone's building, that I guess like someone's like going to work every day or whatever to like buy the building to like rent it out to somebody else, and it probably annoys them, like.
But don't bite the hand that feeds you. If you've got a problem with society, take it out on the public walls and the train system. Don't take it out on the people that are putting on hip hop gigs.
Exactly. Yeah.
For the last 15 years, you've been doing the DMCs, and no disrespect to the DMCs, but that it's not what it was.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, if you're not doing it, are they in a local pub? You know what I mean? So you've got
you've got just online.
Yeah. So that, man, and the DMCs is an interesting one. And you've had it there for quite a while.
Yeah.
And that's got to be good, because if for someone who's passionate about that industry, it's cool for you to give them a space, even if it isn't, I'm guessing, overly profitable for you, but it's cool for the culture and for the scene.
Yeah, and that's like what we've always tried to be about, is like trying to just give people like a platform to like, perform and get out there and like do that. And, I've had these same discussions with like authorities and police and things like that around some of the stuff that we're doing, where like, we have had the odd occasion where we've been kind of like, not necessarily like, overtly instructed to not run a show, but like, they're kind of like, got some grief with us running a particular event here and there.
And they've come to you and said that?
Yeah, we've had that a couple of times.
Like the council or the cops?
The police, yeah.
The local police say, we don't want this in our streets.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, and we've basically gone back to them and said, look, we're happy to sit down with you and talk through stuff. Like, you guys have a presence. Like, you can be at the event, you can do whatever. Like, we were happy to like meet with the promoters or the artists or whatever and you guys, but we will be running the event, because like these guys are trying to like perform, basically
do something positive,
create art as far as I'm concerned, and like do something positive and like try and get themselves out of these positions, or like, where they're coming from, Do
you believe that the authorities were racially motivated with that? I'm not sure which artist, but I'm just kind of getting.
Not necessarily. Like, I don't think it's a racial thing. It's just like I think like authorities in general like are quite can be quite kind of reactive. They don't necessarily like have the. I mean, in their defense, I just don't think they have the manpower or the budget necessarily, or the.
There's a lot going on around there on a Saturday anyway.
Yeah, or the scope to like be working in a preventative kind of way. You know, I guess that's like someone else's problem, you know, and that's like for the, you know, the youth work system and the like, you know, the social work system and things like that. So, you know, like, police and things kind of work in a more of a like, a reactionary way. So, you know, they'll have intelligence say that, you know, this postcode gang's going to like have an issue with this other postcode gang, and like there's people that are in those crews that are like performing like at an event or whatever, and they have, you know, public safety concerns that, you know, something's going to kind of pop off at the venue. And we just do our best as well to like kind of, you know, we've like from day one, you know, been like looking at things from a preventative point of view of any incidents happening in the venue where, you know, we do run a really solid security team. We brief people really well. Our staff are really well, like, you know, educated and like aware of things going on, like across the board. You know, if we've got high risk events, you know, we've got metal detectors on the doors, you know, we scan all IDs, you know, like all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we've got, you know, pretty extensive CCTV in there and stuff like that as well, just to kind of like, like protect people. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, people can like sit at home and listen to music and have drinks and all of that, you know, but they want to come out and do it in a venue and like go to events and stuff. And it's our job to make sure that they can do that and do it safely and like get home in one piece as well.
Exactly.
You know?
And you, as a venue owner, you don't want any, like if you thought it was going to be that much of a fucking all-in brawl, you're not going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
No. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely, we've had some events where we've had, like more police than punters.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Man, for a venue like that, you've definitely had some good acts come through, man. Who are some of your favourite ones that you've had through, or even ones that you probably didn't think were going to be awesome but just turned out to be like spot on?
I don't know. It's just, like it's such a long list, you know.
It's long.
It's crazy, like the things that have happened in there. And some of it's just been mental as well, you know, like just like, you know, when like, you know, Childish Gambino play downstairs one night on like a Wednesday, you know, it was like, and it all got put together like during the day, you know, like,
wow, yeah.
You know, like, Ghostface upstairs, Action Bronson, Freddie Gibbs, AJ Tracy, like
crazy.
You know, we've had really mental gigs. We ran like a electronic kind of DJ, like trap producer, like Loonice did a gig downstairs, and like it was like Laundry, a crew called Too Much that were around at the time, and the Operatives like ran it, and like there was like sweat running down the walls. It was like that, you know, ran downstairs, and like, you know, mental. And then, like, I don't know, some other stuff, like, we've done things that are like, you know, I've been really enjoying doing, like, you know, we've done a lot of shows like recently with like guys like Husky and Enter and, you know, Kid Curvey and, you know, some of those like Sydney crews, and like a lot of that's been run through Forte. And, you know, like they've been like really great shows, you know, like, you know, we've had like Wombat play there a bunch in the last like, you know, year and a half. You know, and then you see some other, there's other performers that are like amazing and don't necessarily, like have massive audiences as well, you know, like, so like, you know, like guys like Shadow, like amazing artist, you know, like great to watch, you know, has a like really cool stage presence, but, you know, doesn't necessarily like, you know, always like pack the place out, you know.
But him and Wombat would have a bit of crossover, you'd imagine.
I think so, but I just think, it's like just probably like slightly different kind of market, you know. You know, we did a few shows with like Posse Shot, you know, they were really cool. One of them ended up really chaotic as people left, but like it's just been, it's been cool. Like it's just, we've done like some really cool stuff in there, and we've, you know, like had, a lot of amazing events that have, like, you know, at the beginning of people's careers and like at different points in people's careers, and, you know, like...
What stage did you have Action Bronson there? Like what stage of his trajectory was that?
it was kind of like as he was coming up, I think. It was just like he was here and did like, he did laundry in the Forum. Like,
wow, that's a big differential.
Yeah, it was like, I think the Forum was like part of a festival. Like it was kind of like, yeah, part of like a bigger event. And then, yeah, he did a laundry show as well. And that was, that was crazy. But that was like that period too where we were just like back to back doing a lot of that stuff. You know, we had like, you know, I remember like, I think we had like Ghostface one night, you know, like Bad Not Good played the night after. And then like a couple of weeks later, like I think, like Action Bronson was on maybe. Amazing. And then like Freddie Gibbs was a bit after that. And then, you know, later on we had stuff like, like AJ Tracy, you know, Freddie Gibbs has played there a bunch of times. It's just like, and then like, left to center things, you know, like David Banner happened to be here like on a holiday or something, you know, he's like, then he ended up like hanging out or recording with like M Phases at the time. And then they're like, oh, we want to do a show. And then like, just like threw a show on out of nowhere on a few days notice. And like, you know, like, you know, we did Hyro the Hero, who's like not even, you know, he's like a smaller kind of artist, but like was on Soundwave, ended up doing a show upstairs there. It was like a little Sidewave show, but like the show was cool, but then like what was even cooler was like one side of the stage for the show was all of Slipknot and Limp Bizkit were the other side of the show. Like, wow. And then they all ended up back there the night after and DJ Lethal played downstairs, you know, like, wow. And like, all the Limp Bizkit guys were just like hanging out in there, you know, like, and we used to get a lot of that as well. Like, cause we kind of like went for this, I guess like as far as hip hop clubs go, like most hip hop or R&B clubs and stuff at the time in Melbourne all went that bougie kind of bottle service booth.
You had bottle service for a bit.
We still do. Yeah. But we kind of did it in more of a like that, you know, ratchety kind of underground kind of way. You know, always like, you know, we never had a lot of like, you know, moving lights in there or flashy things or like, you know, went in for these like multi-million-dollar like refurbs with like, you know...
It was still grimy, but
it was always grimy, It was always that kind of like, Fitzroy, grimy, dark kind of...
You've definitely had some left of centre shows, I remember, man. What about your boy Bangs? He packed the joint out?
Yeah, he packed the joint out at that time, like, after, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, like, you know, said that it was the worst thing that was ever recorded or whatever. But we just jumped straight on it, you know, like, and that's like something that over time we've, you know, been able to do and like kind of just, like watch for these trends and then kind of just jump on things and be like, okay, cool, let's like, you know, bang something out. But Bang, like, you know, we did a Christmas show with Bangs a few years ago, you know, and he just like...
He still pulls a crowd?
Look, you know, it was okay. You know, it wasn't like...
That first one was
yeah. I think that might have actually been probably his second show there. I think he'd done another one that we kind of did a bit of a, tongue-in-cheek thing. And then, the Jimmy Kimmel thing happened and like that turned into like, big kind of thing, you know.
Now, one of my most bizarre DJ experiences was at Laundry when I think I did two of them, but one was like a whole Kanye night.
Yeah.
And I played for 2 hours downstairs, nothing but Kanye songs, and people fucking lost it.
Yeah.
And even when I lobbed up, there was a line.
Yeah.
And then I think we did a Kanye versus Drake one where I played another 2 hours of just Kanye. That sort of stuff's crazy, man.
That was like a really crazy period in that venue. And like the irony of that was that like it kind of started out as a bit of a joke.
But it fucking worked, man.
It did. So like where all of that started was like Drake, that first Drake tour, like he announced that he was touring Australia and it was just like all I saw and it was all about Facebook at that time. And like all I was seeing was people posting about Drake. And I put up this stupid status that was something like all I'm seeing in my feed is Drake. Like maybe I should run a night and we'll like put Drake on the flyer, call it Drake night and only play Drake all night. And it got like 700 likes or something. And I was like, maybe this is a thing.
Yeah.
So like we were like, let's roll with this. And we did it. And like we ran like a lot of those events and then we spun them off into doing, like Kanye nights and like Rihanna nights and like, you know, all that sort of stuff. And then even some of those, I think we did Kanye versus Rihanna one night. And I think someone that was like on the way out in Dan Andrews' social media team, like they like posted on Dan Andrews' Twitter, I think it was, or something like that at the time. It was like work, work, work every day except tomorrow, because it was like the grand final eve or something. Head out to like Rihanna versus Drake at Laundry Bar tonight or something. And it was like we ended up with a line down to the traffic lights, round the corner. Like it was just mental. And like those nights were so big that we were doing things like, you know, I remember one of those Kanye nights, it was bucketing down with rain. People were in the line for like hours, and we went and bought all these disposable ponchos during the day.
Yeah.
And like Tina and I were like walking along the line, like handing them to people. And then when they got to the front of the venue and they're under the awning, they'd take them off and we'd take them down the line and hand them to more people that were out in the rain.
Yeah.
And it was just like mental. You were just like, how long have you been in the line for? And people were like, oh, like 2 hours. And you're like, are you okay? Like, because you're drenched, you know? And they're like, we just want to get in there, you know? Like, it was
they
just
lose
really
their shit when they
it was
get
a
in there.
crazy period.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like so funny because it was back in like this period too, like before we had things like, you know, LED walls on the stages and stuff like that. And literally, like, I would spend, you know, and I kind of miss that period in some ways. You know, it was kind of, I guess it was my art and craft period where I would spend like days like printing out these like AO like Drake heads and Kanye things and like these little like we'd do these designs and we'd like glue them all onto cardboard and cut them out and hanging them up everywhere. There's all these props like and Halloween used to be the same. You know, I used to spend like a full week in in laundry pre-Halloween like building stuff on stages and stuff, you know. This was before, you know, that became like a theme in venues. You know, you see venues now like Porn & Co and Storyville and stuff where it's like, that's like the theme of the venue. You know, back in those days, they're like every venue was just like a black box pretty much. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we'd go in and like we'd build things. You know, I remember one year like for Halloween, like I turned the downstairs stage into like 21 Savage trap house and we built this like pink house on the stage and like, you know, like cut out like windows and stuff so you could see the DJ through it and things like that, you know, like, and it was just like, it was a different kind of time and a different like effort level, you know,
that went into it and that's the thing I think now with the success of places like, you know, the Fun Labs venues that are themed, like Holy Moly and these other fucking, I don't know, like the hotel ones and all that sort of thing. It gives people an Instagrammable experience, which I think the punter is after. Yeah. Right? So even if they don't play golf, they're there in the upside down room and shit, you know? And I think that's definitely, those guys had cottoned on early and figured out people love this Instagrammable shit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think they have, and I think, like the, you know, the group that's led by, Josh Leffers that's got, like
Porn. Who is Porn and, Ballers Club.
Ballers Clubhouse and Storyville and stuff like that. You know, he bought like a prop company, like at some point, I think when they were building Storyville, like, and I think they were like, to be honest, I think like he was almost like, like ahead of it to start with. Like, you know, I think they opened like 3 or 4 venues that were kind of heavily themed, and like, you know, Porn & Co I think was the only one of them to sort of survive, and then
it had the fucking limousine in there, you know, so that was an Instagram, and this was early Instagram. Like he was onto it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like he did like, I think he did like about 4 of those places like early on, and as I say, Porn & Co was the only one that kind of like survived out of those 4,
and it's moved to a different venue now.
It has, and they moved like, and then he's like moved more and more into that and created more venues and
Ballers Club and another one, I think
they got Storyville.
Oh, yep.
Ballers,
and another one.
Yeah, he did like that, and he did that like I think he did that like 27 Club theme like pub thing on King Street briefly or whatever as well.
Yeah, it was. That was.
They took over some pub and kind of
that's knocked down now.
Yeah. Like they just had like a really short lease on it, and I think he did like a
Animal House. Animal something.
That was it. Yeah. But
man, Josh is an interesting dude. I think before he got into that, he was a male stripper, man.
Okay.
So that just made me think, I'm like, he'd be a good person to talk to.
Yeah.
But I think that is the future, not sadly, but I think that's, people want an experience and they want to be able to show that shit online.
And we're seeing that more and more in the market. You know, we're seeing like when we run like specific events that like, you know, they draw an audience, but like the things that we maybe do like on a week to week basis, like aren't drawing as big an audience, and then we're having to like either kind of throw some sort of a theme over it or beside it or whatever to like kind of like like push it up a little bit. And people are very like they're kind of ruthless at the moment. They walk into a room and there's like, the room might hold 200 people, and if there's only like 50 people in there, like, oh, this is dead, we're going somewhere else. Like they only want to be in the space if it's like full of people now, like or that, like you said, they can kind of go around and like Instagram, like IG, stuff or TikTok things or whatever. And like just generally we're seeing like, I think more of a trend of people like, really kind of like investing in events, like I think like as much as things like Taylor Swift and Blink-182 and things like that were probably great for like, hotel occupancy rates and like, maybe CBD restaurant trade and stuff like that. Like they probably did a fair amount of damage to like every other venue in the market over that kind of 2-3 week period, because like a lot of these kids had just like saved up to go to Taylor Swift, and they'd like got an apartment in the city with their friends, and they were just going to that, and they were going to go to the merch store at Crown and line up and buy their t-shirts. They could wear their t-shirt to the gig and like all of that. And that was like this whole thing, and that like just consumed them for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, that people were sitting out the front of the MCG, so they're not in other venues. Correct. They're sitting out there. So you've got 120,000 fucking people there. You've probably got 30, 40,000 people outside that aren't in another venue.
Yeah, exactly. Like they weren't in other venues. They were like, and then like even I think, again, this is like hearsay, I guess, but like, talking to some of the like security or operators of like venues, say in Richmond, where traditionally that crowd would have then spilled over into them having like a massive rest of the night as that crowd left. They were busy, but they weren't like getting rammed,
A few raspberry lemonades, I'm tipping.
Yeah. You know, so it's just like, I think that whole thing's just, it's tapered more and more into this thing where it's just like people are like, and I think we saw that over the last couple of years with the festivals, where it's like, maybe the lineups weren't as important. People were just like going to the festival for going to the festival. And
that's an experience again.
Yeah, it's an experience. It's like, oh, we're going to this and we're going to be there for 3 days. And you're like, well, who are you going to see? Whatever. But, I think that's come to a tipping point as well now, where it's just kind of like, those festivals where like, they're chasing headliners against each other, touring companies are chasing the same people. The prices of things have just driven up so much that between that and insurance and like...
And the cost of everything.
It's just like, it's getting like untenable to like run a lot of these kind of events.
And you've also got to think from like an artist point of view, they're not selling music anymore. Right? Yeah. So they want the biggest slice from touring. So when you've got tour promoters that are going, you're going to do this, we're also going to sell all the merch, it doesn't seem that like a great deal for them.
Yeah, look.
Not to badmouth the tour promoters, but they're trying to make their money. But the artists, they need to make their money from touring.
For sure. And I don't think that, I don't think anyone's making a lot of money out of any of this stuff anymore. And I mean, again, this is going to have to get to some kind of like, pivotal point. And I think this is like across the board. It's not even just like music. It's like, people's accommodation and like rent and house prices and car prices. And like we're like something's going to have to like kind of crunch at some point, because I don't think we can all just keep paying more and more for everything all of the time, and then have people have got less and less money, or their dollar just doesn't stretch as far anymore.
Without getting too fucking conspiracy theorists though, it's kind of like a good way to control people is to not have them go out, and a way for them to not go out is to not have any fucking money to do it.
Yeah.
To make going out more expensive. Now, we're both in our 40s. If you're a 21-year-old kid, the last 3 years you haven't really been able to go anywhere.
Yeah. So
then you can go out, but do your friends even go out? Well, they don't even really go out. And then it's $16 for a pint.
Yeah. Doesn't
sound that appealing, It's there's a shift happening.
There is. There's definitely and this is the thing that I've kind of come to the conclusion of, or like whatever, in the last couple of months. It started to feel like a bit of a bump in trade. It's post-COVID. Maybe people are like traveling a bit more. They don't have as big a friend circle, stuff like that. But it's now starting to by the time we're getting to, yeah, we're through the first quarter of the year, stuff like that. It's starting to really feel like a actual shift in what people are doing and how they behave now. Yeah, it's like a definite cultural shift in like people like, yeah, consuming less like alcohol, people kind of going out less.
Look at zero alcohol beer.
Yeah.
Right? Now, 5 years ago, if I said to you, now listen, Dave, zero alcohol beer, everyone's going to have one, it's going to be a big thing, you'd be like, mate, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
Everyone would have said that.
Yeah.
It's a fucking thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. It's a thing. Like, a lot of these things are definitely like a big thing now, you know, like, and people are like more and more concerned about that stuff. And like, you know, I just don't think people have got the taste for some of this stuff either, you know, like, you know, I think that's where we're seeing like, you know, particular brands do quite well as well, where like, you know, things that don't really taste like anything, you know, like seltzers were huge. They taste like soda water. They make you feel a bit woozy, you know, like,
it's crazy,
you know,
isn't
some
it?
of these RTDs and, you know, like prepackaged kind of shot stuff in bottles and things like that, you know, like it just, they're a big slice of the market now.
Huge. Like, I don't drink spirits, but I'll pick them up from the bottle shop when I go to my mate's house.
Yeah.
Like, a 6-pack of wild turkeys is like $38.
Yeah, wow.
Right? And that's to buy it there.
Yeah.
So then if you think from a wholesale point of view, you're buying it, then you're selling it at a venue. Like,
Yeah.
fuck, I don't even know what the price point is on something like that, but it's fucking not cheap.
No, it's not. And I mean, this is the thing that, like, I guess, like, you know, I used to have this little, like, speech, I guess, at one point, like, and this was early days, you know, like, and I used to call it I think it was the Corona theory or something at the time. You know, people would come into the venue, and at the time, you know, and this was, as I say, quite a while ago, you know, a Corona would be like $10 over the bar. People would be like, oh, it's only like, you know, and I guess, again, at the time, you know, it was only like $30 or something for a slab of Corona, and now they're more like $50, $60 a slab.
Probably, yeah.
And
670 maybe.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. And it'd just be like, they'd be like, well, you know, I can just go to the bottle-o and, like, you know, buy a Corona, like, buy a case of it for like $30 or $40. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, like, I'm selling it for 10 because, like, you're going to come in, you want to, like, listen to a good DJ who's getting paid decent money.
Good money, you always paid well?
Played through a sound system that's, like, premium. Controlled by a sound tech that's, like, making sure that, like, you know, the DJ doesn't blow it up. Then, you know, like, someone's got to, like, open your bottle of beer and, like, hand it to you. It's been refrigerated all week in either a cool room or, like, a fridge, and those things are running 24/7.
Some dickheads just tag the toilets.
Exactly.
You know, their overheads are non-stop.
Yeah, exactly. You know, then someone's got to pick up your bottle. Then, like, you know, there's security there because, like, one of your mates might be a bit, you know, edgy and, like, think that it's a good idea that someone's pissed him off and he's going to crack someone in the head with the bottle. Yep. So security's got to be there to either break that up or, like, deal with it. And then your third mate thinks it's funny to, like, smash his bottle in the toilet. So I've got to call an emergency plumber in the middle of the night for $500-600 to come and, like, fish the broken bottle out of the toilet so everyone else can use the toilet. And this is why your Corona at the time cost $10 when it cost me $5.
Exactly.
Like,
and people just don't get that.
No. And now we've got, like, you know, the added benefit of, like, you know, I think when we opened Laundry, the liquor license was probably about $1,500 a year or something. You know, I just paid them the other day, $8,500 a year now for the liquor license. You know, public liability insurance used to be like $6,000 a year, $7,000 a year, maybe. You know, now we're up to like $60,000 and $120,000 a year for public liability insurance.
APRA?
Yeah, APRA, PPCA, like One Music, you know, like, and all of that's based on like your whole numbers of like what's going through the venue rather than what people are spending, you know. Like, and again, like, once upon a time, you probably could have set your watch by people spending about at least $50 a head when they went to the venue. Now it can be like 8 and 10 and 11, you know, like, because you got half the people not buying anything and then you got other people buying 3 or 4 drinks, but like it's averaging out at a very low number now.
Where do you see hospitality in this, like, without being too, you know, like, pessimistic about it? Where do you see it going? Can it sustain like this with the price, with the tax increases and with everything going up?
Look, I don't think that like live music venues or most live music venues that are predominantly doing that, can really sustain operating in the long term. If that is your like business model, which it is for venues like Laundry, you know, we saw the Bendigo Hotel close down, you know, the other week. the Tote, nearly go again. Whole Lot of Love closed down a few weeks ago. There's a few other venues that I know are definitely kind of teetering on the precipice. And then you've also, we're competing in the same market as like other venue operators that are, potentially, backed by super funds and things like that. We've talked about AVC and things like that, who are operating venues like the SB and, Beer Deluxe and, some other quite big kind of venues. And, they're doing live music and things, and they're starting to do things like buy out whole tours, where, I saw, I think, a couple of, it might have been last year at some stage, so like Chillin' It, only played AVC venues on his whole Australian tour, and they seem to be doing more of that and offering, people some which
is a good deal for him.
Yeah.
Makes it easy for
100%.
him.
It makes it really easy for them.
So you can't hate on him.
No,
for that,
not at all. That's just like an artist, hustling and doing their job. And
he seems to be savvy with that shit.
Yeah, and his management's amazing. He's with the One Day guys, and Nick and Adit there are brilliant guys, even from the old days when they were in Axe and running those the One Day parties, which have just brought back some of that. Their management style of artist is second to none.
But that, again, the artists have to make the money from the touring because
100%.
they how many physical CDs he's buying. I'm sure he's getting streams, but you've got to fucking
The streams are not worth anything though, and the streams are not. They're not super relevant to numbers either these days in venues. Someone that can have massive streams might not pull a crowd to a venue, and then you've got other artists that have got low streams, but great numbers on say YouTube or things like that, and they are pulling numbers.
It's, I think with the fan base, it's to do with how committed and how on your side they are.
Yeah.
And just from doing this show, with the DOA, right? The t-shirt. So he's got 3,000 or 4,000 Instagram followers.
Yeah.
He does his live verse that had 350 shares.
Yeah.
That's more than 10% of his audience sharing, or maybe there's a little bit of our stuff, but sharing it. And then you look at someone who might have 30,000 and they don't get the shares. It's how much your fans ride with you that makes a difference. And that translates to numbers through the door.
It's all about engagement, it's all about engagement, and that's what we see that with artists, we see it with venues and things like that as well, but it's just I think that
the mentality's changed though, surely, because you used to think this person's got 100,000 Instagram followers, we can bank on them, and that 100%. Means shit now.
It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just it's really down to engagement and how committed their fan base are to them, and you've got kids that are into artists and stuff, and they might not even be listening to stuff on Spotify or whatever, so they're not even contributing to those numbers.
Yeah,
they're watching it on YouTube, or they're you got artists Posse Shot have made really good use of Discord and stuff like that.
They build community.
They're building community. And again, that's back to what I'd said earlier. It's I think a lot of the failure of things during COVID, when all a lot of that sort of dropped off because people kind of aged out and either found partnered up and had kids and moved on and have moved out of kind of going out regularly and stuff, and that next wave didn't engage with that community, and it's sort of it's been a real break in things.
Yeah.
That it's just a sad thing that that's kind of happening, and it's definitely going to continue to be the causation of I think venues closing and things not being kind of what they were.
Yeah. And I think with Melbourne, with Victoria, they want to push these positive parts of culture, but they also don't want to help them out too much, right? And you see it in multiple facets. Okay, they want to say, come to Melbourne, there's heaps of nightlife, there's heaps of things, but where is the fucking support for that?
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, they're come to Hosier Lane, it's really beautiful. But then yesterday they're and if anyone wants to report any graffiti artists, we'll fucking shut the shit down. Which one is it?
I know. And look, I mean, this is the thing that we see that a lot with funding as well, and it's just, and then, you get the government like kind of, because there's been a little bit of media in the last few weeks with a lot of the pressure on smaller live music venues. And, you know, the government at both a state level and a federal level is kind of like, you know, pops back up and is just like, you know, federal government's like, oh, but we gave away like $140 million during COVID or whatever. It's just like, well,
couldn't open.
we couldn't open, or like we had to like do things, or like, but you're also giving it to everybody else and everything got super competitive, and an artist that was maybe worth $1,000 all of a sudden wanted $10,000 for a show because we just got that on this festival, or like, you know, this other venue did it because like they had a grant for $100,000 or whatever. So you kind of like, you're like, well, they didn't do that very well. And then like, then they've now popped out at a state government level, you know, with like, you know, the Always Live program and stuff. They've kind of like gone, oh, but we've like spent all this money and we've run all these events. And it's like there is merit in that. And like, you know, I respect the fact that, yeah, like, you know, they bought out Foo Fighters and did a gig in Geelong and like all that sort of stuff. And like, that's cool, you know, like, and they did the Christina Aguilera thing and all that sort of stuff. And like, yeah, they're running events and they're like putting money into that stuff. But like,
what about the
grassroots? At a grassroots level, like what happens in the future? Like, where does the next, you know, and again, these are American artists, but, you know, like out of the Australian market, you know, where do the next kind of like, you know, say Hilltop Hoods or Chillin' It or Bliss and Esso or things like that, where do they come from? Or where does the next Parkway Drive come from? Or, you know, Confession, or like, you know, the heavier bands and stuff. Like, where do these bands come from if they aren't able to like play 80 cap rooms, 100 cap rooms and 350 cap rooms because like as operators, we can't afford to open them anymore because like, you know, and albeit, yeah, you know, maybe there's an argument that we should have diversified our businesses more. And, you know, if we were like, you know, a big company and we had some pokies and like we had a big bistro and then like we had the Croxton band room, you know, like those other parts of the business are paying to have a big space there that can do, you know, bigger artists or whatever. Yeah. But it's just not the way like we're set up. And, you know, it's just not the way that like any of these venues kind of operated, or nor do we have the space for it. You know, like if I wanted to start serving burgers at Laundry, like there's nowhere to put a kitchen, you know, like I'd be eating into floor space, which would mean I couldn't do as bigger events. I'd have to hire a chef full time, you know, and like there's better places doing better food, you know, like it's not, and I don't want to eat into their market either. I don't want to like be
stay in your lane.
Yes. It's like, exactly. I don't want to be like, look, there's this great restaurant that I really liked on like Brunswick Street, say, and now they're not there anymore because everyone came to Laundry Bar for a burger before the show.
That's it.
And then like they didn't go there beforehand, you know.
For sure.
So, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, if everyone kind of was, yeah, in their lane or whatever, like, you know, and we're seeing more diversification like of that stuff, you know, but it's just like, you know, these venues that are like kind of, you know, were based, and it is like that, I think 500 capacity and down that is like in the biggest dire kind of situation at the moment.
There's going to be a huge void, right? The way that it's going. It's going to be like you play at your local pub that has a stage in the corner.
Yeah.
Or you go to the Forum, right? Because where are these other middle of the range?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. And the venues that are like 500 cap and up, you know, a lot of them are or were big enough to diversify. And, you know, you see like, you know, like a brilliant example of diversification is probably like probably one of the best venues that's done it, I think, is the Corner Hotel.
Yep.
You know, they like built the big rooftop and they've separated parts of the venue out and they've got function space and they've got all of that and they've maintained a really brilliant band room downstairs.
The Prince is one that's sort of done it pretty well as well.
The Prince kind of did it well, but I think that like the Prince has had a lot of inherent issues with like just being in St Kilda.
Location.
Like St Kilda's like not, you know, really like
what it was.
No,
but they did a good job early days.
I think they did a really good job early days of like splitting the venue into a whole bunch of outlets.
Club nights and then gigs and you know what I mean?
Yeah, but then I think the venue changed hands a few times. It changed management like countless times and bookers and things like that. And it just sort of, its direction never kind of really like, you know, they never stayed in the right, you know, kind of direction. Whereas the Corner has.
Totally. And it's never compromised.
No, and they've diversified in a really good way and they've like managed to like, create other elements to the business and
again, location though.
And they have a great location as well, you know, like they've got, you know, like a great crowd feeding from the stadiums and things like that, and they're
Next
able
to one of the biggest train stations that's not in the city.
Totally. So they're able to pick up a lot of trade from a lot of other things. You know, you're not kind of like...
a great reputation. Always has.
Yeah.
With your other venues, so after Laundry, you settled into Fitzroy, and then a bar down the road, you had an opportunity there with George's.
Yeah.
Now, that was an interesting one, man, because that kind of went viral without you meaning it to.
Basically, yeah. So, like, I kind of, like, in between, I opened a couple other little venues at South Wharf, which just sort of came and went.
Do we want to talk about that?
Not really. We were in there for about 12 months, and then we're out of there. And it's quite kind of corporate, and, you know, like, it wasn't... It kind of, like, it taught us a lesson, I guess, that wasn't really the way that we wanted to be and do business.
The Docklands is a basket case in general.
Totally, yeah. So, yeah, then, like, basically, I guess I got out of those, we got out of those venues, and then our office was on Brunswick Street, and then, yeah, like, that venue was, like, spotted. That was, like, Tina that spotted it and knew that I kind of wanted to do something else.
And it's just to let people know, it was a smaller venue. What is it?
Yeah, it was about 120 capacity venue.
Yeah.
3 a.m. license.
Which is cool for something like a side project.
100%, yeah. It used to be like, back in the day, it was 120 bar, which people were like a lot of, like, you know, probably not quite our parents' age, but probably the generation in between, you know, would have known that venue really well. It was like Nick Giannopoulos owned it, and it was like pretty like cheesy, kind of like retro party kind of vibe, and yeah, definitely had like an interesting, colourful clientele in there. And it had been a quite busy venue at times, and then yeah, basically it had kind of like it'd come up, the lease had come up, the guys that were in there, you know, weren't making enough money out of it to kind of continue with it, so they, you know, they closed it or whatever. So it came up for lease. We went and looked at it, came up with a game plan in there, which was very much along the lines of a kind of, like whiskey dive bar kind of vibe. You know, we had about 12 beers on tap or something. We built a massive cool room in the basement downstairs. And then, like, yeah, came up with a couple of name ideas for it. The name George's actually came up over dinner one night as a bit of a joke. We were kind of like sitting there talking about what stuff we're going to put in there, some stuff that we had at the time. And yeah, like Tina's dad's name is George. And we were kind of like, oh, you know, we're moving that many like staff down there that have like Greek descent and stuff like that. We might as well call it George's. And then it's kind of stuck. We went back to the office, and it was like, you know, this is a name, and everyone in the office was like, yeah, that's a solid name. Like, we can market that, you know. And then as we took the venue over, I just kind of like off cuff, basically like, yeah, printed out a whole bunch of like just posters. We had a big AO printer in the office, and the first thing that came up was these, like just picture of George Costanza, and we kind of like printed them and like stuck all these George Costanza heads in the front window. Somewhere along the line, I think it was Beat Magazine, saw that, ran with this story that it was a Seinfeld theme bar.
Man, it was crazy, wasn't it?
Which, like, I was like, it's what? And then...
Because you had the mural on the side.
Well, no, the mural came after. So all of these things came after.
Yeah.
So basically, like, all that was there was these, like, photocopy, like, pictures of this, like drawing of George Costanza's head that was stuck in the front window.
But I remember I followed it on Instagram because I was at Laundry a lot then, and I was 100 followers, right? And then the next day, you had like 10,000.
Exactly.
Overnight.
So basically, like, what happened was, like, it was, you know, look, it was probably part of being that Christmas, New Year's slow news period that we were about ready to open. I know there was a couple of like really tragic things happened around that period that were like in the news a lot. There was a dad that, you know, I think drove his car off the pier down here somewhere with the kids in it and stuff like that. And there was some bushfires, and
I need a feel-good story.
The media were looking for a bit of a good feel-good story, and Beat Magazine had just kind of like written this article, and I was just like, what are you talking about? Seinfeld theme bar. And then it ended up being like their most opened article for that year. And I'm like, okay, this is a thing. Like, this is like, and we just jumped on it. and like started making calls, started printing things out, started framing things, started buying things on eBay. Yeah, organised like someone to come and like paint that mural on the side of the bar.
And it was making international news.
It was, yeah. No, I did press like all over the world.
Yeah.
I think Sunrise and I think the morning show both broadcast live from there. I remember like I think it was the morning show with like Kochi or whatever. I like literally like I did New Year's Eve at Laundry, like walked down there, kind of had a bit of a nap in like one of the booths, and then like this like TV crew arrived and we did like a whole live cross thing.
Yeah.
And if the interview's online somewhere, it was like kind of amusing where they're like, oh, you look a bit tired. I'm like, well, I run another venue up the road. Like I literally finish work at 4 and we're like on TV at 6, you know, or 7 or whatever. So like I was wrecked, you know.
But I remember telling like Jess, I'm like, I know that like you're just running with it because you saw an opportunity.
100%.
And I'm like, this was not a Seinfeld themed bar, but the next thing you're on international news going, it's a great idea.
And this is and this was the like the irony of what happened with it later on when, you know, like as often happens with these things, you know, next thing we get a cease and desist letter from Castle Rock Entertainment. And my lawyers were able to turn around and go, if you can find anywhere where like my client has sent out a press release or anything else saying that we're opening a Seinfeld themed bar and this is the theme of the venue, come back with it and we'll have something to talk about. And there wasn't, because like that was never like what the pitch was. Like we'd never rolled out this like, oh, we're opening this themed venue. We just kind of like, we picked up on the fact that obviously like the marketplace wanted that. We followed through with it and we delivered it. And then, yeah, like obviously I did a lot of press and stuff, but, you know, we kept most of the questions and things like that around, you know, it was things like, you know, did you watch the show when you were a kid? You know, like, are you into the show? And, you know, I like quickly got myself, I had watched Seinfeld when I was a kid, but I quickly got myself up to speed on, you know, like a whole bunch of good, you know, kind of like press-worthy, like, you know, snippet things that were like, you know...
Say yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
that sort of
just worth talking about, you know, and we did, you know, funny things where we just, you know, like, jumped on Marketplace and stuff and ran with things. You know, we put a vending machine in there that just had Twix and Snickers bars in it.
Amazing.
And, you know, you could get a plate with a knife and fork at the bar to, like, eat your Snickers bar if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it went crazy. Like, people were, like, to start with, like a little whiskey dive bar that was kind of going to be open on the weekends, ended up open 7 days a week, and we had lines of people like waiting to get in, and we were off to Costco every morning to like buy more bread because the food menu in there was just like toasties, and we just couldn't make them quick enough, and we'd run out of bread every night, and we'd run out of like stuff, and like it was
But can it sustain a theme like that? Can it, even if it's
I don't
unintentional?
believe so.
Yeah.
And it
hype,
didn't.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, the hype continued for a while, but like luckily for us, you know, from a business point of view, it wasn't the concept to start with. So it was just sort of something that we ran with from, you know, a market point of view.
Yep.
And then we continued along with what we'd sort of intended to do. And then like we kind of pushed that agenda more and more as, you know, that the theme side of things, or like what people had picked up on, kind of, you know, waned a little bit. We continued with the fact that, you know, we had 700 whiskies on the back of the bar, and we had about 12, you know, craft beers on tap, and, you know, started putting, you know, DJs on the Friday, Saturday, and, you know, had people in there kind of having fun, and people would come in early and, you know, have some food or whatever and cocktails, and we ran trivia during the week and comedy on Wednesday nights for a long time and things like that.
So
and
it evolved.
It just evolved into a good solid business.
But you've sold it now?
I sold it. Yeah, we sold it last year to
Have they rebranded?
Another group. They did a bit of a rebrand, and then, unfortunately, it's no longer open.
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah, there you go.
It's actually, you know, if anyone wants to lease it, you can hit up Bell Property, I think, the agent, and you can reopen George's bar if you like.
But aside from George's, though, there's also Bad Decisions. So that's another one that you still have.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us how that came to be?
So, Bad Decisions was and that site was a funny one, I guess. So it was a bar called La Sangria. Our landlord at Laundry had, run La Sangria as a business, and then eventually just kind of like, it was never really open, and he just would hang out in there during the day and read the newspaper. And for years I was just like, dude, like, let me take it over.
He obviously doesn't need the money if he's doing that.
Well, yeah, look, he owned 3 buildings in a row there, and, you know, other properties and things like that. And yeah, I was just kind of on him for a long time to like take the space over. It never really happened. And then, unfortunately, a couple of years ago now, he passed away. Okay. And yeah, just prior to doing that, he was, knew that he was very ill and you know, he wasn't going to be around a lot longer. Spoke to me and spoke to his wife, and basically kind of did a deal to take that space over. So I think a couple of weeks after his funeral, we got the keys to it, and then went in and like kind of basically gutted it. And rebuilt the whole venue. Did a lot of really cool finishing work in there with the guys from Mock Turtle, who did a lot of the work at the SB when they did the major refit in there, all the aging kind of stuff. Yep. So they did a whole bunch of stuff in there as well. And some really cool metal fabricators and stuff that we've worked with, and like
the branding's really cool too.
Yeah. And the branding again was just kind of like off cuff. We came up with a whole bunch of names, and then that was sort of the full name of the venue is sort of technically like Bad Decisions and Good Times. But we just kind of stuck with the Bad Decisions thing, and then I ended up getting like Cindy Sin to do a whole bunch of
and you can tell it's very distinct style.
Very Cindy style. And we just kind of ran with it, and it's just it's like and we kind of went into it as well, I guess, like so upstairs had been like a 1-bedroom apartment, but it was on the liquor license. And I'm like, well, I'm like, this apartment's licensed. This is like $150 a week apartment, or it's a function space or an event space.
It's a potential noise complaint.
Basically, So we kind of, went up there, rejigged it. I turned what was like, the family style bathroom with a bath and a shower and a vanity and stuff into 2 toilets and an office. And the kitchen was kind of almost looked like a bar already. So we like pulled all the guts out of the kitchen and the European laundry, which is now like the kind of glassy section, and just, put stainless in it and fridges, and turned it into we cut out the stove extraction and stuff that was there, and built a stage up there, and turned it into initially kind of more of a function space. But it's definitely evolved now more into, like a live music space. There's predominantly like live music up there 4 nights a week.
Yep. And people still can hire it out for
People still can hire it out for functions, and we still do the odd function up there, but it's predominantly got live music up there Thursday through Sunday every week. Mm-hmm. Last weekend, out of the 4 nights we traded, 3 of them were sold out shows. It's doing quite well. And then downstairs is like a divey kind of cocktail bar, and the courtyard in the back of it, which is undercover as well, is like, it's also, the courtyard's licensed till 3 a.m. in the morning. So like having an outdoor area in Fitzroy that's licensed till 3 a.m. is like rare as. So it was like, initially it wasn't even on the license, and then during COVID I did a whole bunch of work on the liquor licenses across Bads and Laundry. We had Laundry's license increase from 270 to 350, and extended some hours and stuff. And
that's a positive to take out of COVID.
Totally, yeah. And then we managed to get the courtyard at Bad Decisions licensed, and you've
done well there, man.
Yeah, it was a funny argument where like it really came down to the whole planning permit argument came down to an RSA question where I was like, So you're telling me that people can have alcohol upstairs, but then when they get to the bottom of the staircase, they've got to, scull their drink before they walk through this, nether region of, 4 meters of courtyard to get into the downstairs bar, which is also licensed. And, how is that responsible kind of thing? And then they, basically, the council conceded that argument and issued a planning permit for it and, under the same conditions as the other 2 sections. It was just this weird thing where you had, 2 parts of a venue licensed till 3 a.m. all weekend, and then this, section in between that on the planning permit was a car park.
Yep.
And it wasn't on the liquor license.
And that's one thing that I think a lot of people that aren't in the hospitality industry don't understand. These liquor licenses are fucking bizarre.
They are,
and a lot of them were written, probably almost 100 years ago in a time where you didn't even think about the consumption of alcohol, where you're going to have it. And there's, some people just don't get it. There's tavern licenses, there's live music, you can't have this, you can't do that. It's crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
And until you're in that industry, you don't even think about it.
No.
And then when you are, you're like, that license is doing this, I understand why they don't do that.
Yeah.
And punters don't get it.
No, they don't, yeah. But it's just it was just, it was really interesting. But that courtyard in that venue, it pumps. It's a funny thing with
What's
that.
the music clause with it though?
I don't have music playing out there, but it's so full all the time that, there's enough of a buzz out there that it doesn't really matter, and you can kind of hear a bit of music coming from downstairs.
Do you have dickhead residents or anything?
We don't. Funnily enough, when we applied for the permit, we had a couple of objections come in from residents. And City Yarra is one of the councils that will let you kind of essentially confront those residents in a round table kind of meeting. So
you don't just lob up to their house.
Yeah, no, you don't lob up to their house. But I called. There's part of the planning process with City of Yarra where you can call this kind of round table meeting. Out of the objectors, only one of them turned up.
Yeah.
And
it's kind of calling their bluff.
Pretty much, yeah. And he was like, look, we're having these issues with this venue and this venue. And I'm like, luckily enough, Bad Decisions is right next door to Laundry. And I'm like, how long have you lived in your apartment? And he was like, X amount of years or whatever. I'm like, have you ever had any issues with Laundry? He goes, look, at the time it was 8 or 10 years I think I'd been in Laundry. He was like, oh, maybe when they first opened, I had a couple of things, but then they fixed them up. Haven't had any issues since, haven't heard any issues or anything. And Laundry's got massive sound systems. We rebuilt the sound system downstairs during COVID, and the system that's downstairs was in a club in Brisbane called TBC Club, which is a 1,500 cap. Downstairs at Laundry's about 200, 250. It's got the same that PA came out of Brisbane, got put in there. There's 4 double 21-inch subs in there, speakers all through the room. The building shakes at times, and if these residents aren't having a problem with it. Yeah. So I turn around to the guy, I'm like, well, I actually own Laundry, and I have done the whole time that you've lived in your apartment. And if you're not having any issues there...
It's in safe hands.
You won't have any issues with this venue. And he was like, you know what, I'm cool with that. And withdrew his objection, and that it just went through from there.
Yeah, for sure. You're lucky, man, because I know people in a similar vicinity have a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know if you know that, but man, fucking pain in the ass stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it gets me as someone who's always lived in the city until recently moved down here.
Yeah.
It's common sense. Don't buy an apartment next to one of the busiest streets in your area.
Yeah.
And if you, I loved hanging out in St Kilda. I get to the point where I don't want to go out anymore.
Yeah.
I move.
You move, yeah.
I don't expect every other fucking venue to put up with my new change of maturity.
Yeah.
And it's baffling that people are that self-righteous.
But that's been the way it's been for a long time. I used to live in Richmond, on Lennox Street across the road from the London Hotel when I was managing, what was at the time was the depot in Richmond that's now the precinct.
Yep.
And, it'd be the same. And I'm just but it's just it's a funny phenomenon where, people are moving to these areas because, they like the hustle and bustle and the buzz and the access to restaurants and things like that, but then they don't like the noise that people create, later on at night when they've moved from a restaurant to a bar or there's a band playing somewhere or whatever. It's just, it's a really weird thing.
It's the Sally Cap thing again.
Yeah.
It's Hosier Lane's good, graffiti's bad.
Yeah.
Right? Come out to our nightclubs, it's good, but noise is bad. It's
Yeah.
like, fuck, which one is it?
Yeah. Come out to the nightclubs, but immediately get into an Uber or a taxi afterwards, because otherwise you're like creating an amenity issue for the area and like, you know.
What about, man, it's funny you mentioned the depot. Like that was, what a funny venue back in the day. That house in the courtyard, which was like the green room. So fucking weird,
kitchen,
man. Yeah.
It was a funny venue, yeah. It's like...
In my early days of going out, Thursday nights, dollar pots there, man.
Yeah.
Was that your sort of era?
I was probably there then, yeah. We were doing like that, and there's like those like green Midori Illusion shop things that were either like free or whatever. It was funny. I was telling a story about those to some bar staff the other day, because like they were... one of the staff at Bad Decisions was like asking me something about, whether the pineapple juice was like had gone bad or whatever, you know, to chuck it out at the end of the week. And I was just like, I just check if it's like carbonated. And I was like, because long life pineapple juice is the worst for like carbonating. And I started that then rolled into this story about being at the depot, and we used to make up this like Midori Illusion shot mix stuff, and you'd make it up for the Thursday night, and sometimes it'd carry over into like the Friday or the Saturday because you hadn't gone through enough of it. And we'd store it in these glass swing top bottles. And if you didn't use it and then like someone forgot to pour it out on the Saturday night, by the time you came back in on Monday or Tuesday to do stock take and ordering, they had exploded, and there would be shattered glass and green slime everywhere in the cool room in the middle of the bar. But yeah, no, it was just like, that was a different time. And it's like, you wonder now how how venues even, I guess like it was just like the cost of doing business was so much different. Like
totally,
the thought now of selling something for $1 or $5, even $6 or $10 for a basic spirit now is just like, I don't know how you could afford to do that. Like,
but I think back then, obviously times were different, but it was a bit of a loss leader.
Yeah.
And you indoctrinated, which is a bad word, but you got kids like myself who were 18 to go to a place, and that was your place. And then you came back and you went there when you were 21 and you were happy to pay $5 for a beer, which it probably was.
Yeah, for sure. Or you might have come to you'd come and see like there'd be a cover band or something on a Thursday night, and then, you know, there'd be a bigger level cover band on a Sunday, because the Sundays were quite big there. People used to like bounce from the G-Bung in Hawthorne, which is now the Auburn Hotel, to the depot, to the Star Bar, and it was like a little like route every Sunday, and these people would just like follow it. Like,
a lot of polo shirts.
They were, yeah. And like, these people would just be like, out, and they'd be out like all day, all night across those three venues, like until 3 a.m. at Star Bar. It'd be like the end of it, and they'd be like, and that was the era where like cover bands were a big thing, and like they were getting paid quite a lot of money, and there'd be bands on at those
Adam
venues.
12.
Adam 12 were one of them.
Miss Moneypenny, I remember that name as well from that was a
Who was the other one? There was another one I think started with an S. Yeah, I can't remember. Slumberyard, yeah.
How did I remember that?
Yeah, and I think Shrimp Simon that used to like be there, like tech guy. He's like one of he's a big tour manager these days for Destroyer Lines and a lot of those companies. He still does still works as a full-time tour manager.
Yeah, different time, man.
Yeah. It was definitely,
Yeah, it's a spin out. But you think now, right, like, and you know more than anybody being a owner.
Yeah.
If you open on a public holiday, you're paying somebody probably $60 an hour, right?
Yeah.
And this is what punters don't think of.
And your security want twice that.
Right. And your security are on $60 an hour normally.
100%. So they were like on $120 an hour. And then like, your artists might want more, or like, it's just like, the cost of doing these things is just like through the roof now, like an Easter's like the worst weekend for it, like it's just like Easter's like 4 public holidays in a row, and it's just, it's getting like too expensive to like even operate on some of that,
For sure. And look, you look at places like the US where people just live on tips, and I don't think it should be like that here.
No.
But people are reasonably well looked after. But a club owner that I used to work for a few years ago, he would be like, mate, I'm not opening on Good Friday because I have to pay some 19-year-old girl, right, $60 an hour to sling a couple of vodka lime sodas. He goes, I just can't justify it.
Yeah. And it's getting more and more like that, like across the board, you know, and we're seeing like, you know, yeah, the cost of doing business, insurance is like mental, you know, rents are obviously like just steadily increasing, like, which, you know, they should and they do. And that's just, you know, part of doing business. But, you know, you get, you know, some of these venues that, you know, some of these operators like myself, I guess, that have been in these businesses like kind of long term. Now you've got that hindsight now being able to go, like, oh, when we started this, we were like taking X over the bar and we're paying, you know, Y for rent and we're paying this for insurance and the staff cost
Times
this.
changed.
And now like times have changed, but the bigger issue that we're starting to see, and this is that cultural shift that we spoke about earlier as well, is like the spend hasn't necessarily changed that much. So we might be like, we're paying out like huge amounts more for like, you know, artists, like performers, like production, the cost of doing things, you know, booze, rent, insurance, maintenance, all these sorts of things. But people are not spending any more than they were back then, if in fact they're spending less.
But they don't have an issue to make a withdrawal for $300 at the ATM.
Well, that's part of the thing as well, yeah. Like there's definitely like around with like, I think people are like, that is part of the issue, that there's a perception that like, yeah, spending money on illicit substances in some cases for some of these younger people now is like, yeah, starting to be like perceived as a better use of their money. Like, you know, or a better like cost kind of, you know, thing, like
more bang for buck.
Yeah.
When it used to be an additional extracurruricula thing,
correct.
Now that's sort of their main focus.
100%. Yeah, like, you know, when we're all going out every weekend, you know, like, yeah, like, you know, it's not something that I really ever dabbled in much, but it was like, yeah,
it's always been there.
Yeah, mates would do that, but you'd still drink a shitload as well.
Just make you drink more.
Yeah, exactly. You know, whereas now more and more it seems to be like, you know, it's just like, yeah, it's like one or the other. Like, and we're seeing, I guess, like, yeah, like there's specific audiences that are like heavily into drinking, but then like, yeah, a lot of others like just aren't. Like, and then we've also got the added precursor now, I guess, of just, yeah, like all this like kind of pre-drinking, preloading kind of thing, you know.
But
and
that's
like,
a financial thing.
It is, yeah, and I get it, you know. It's just like, you know, but they've also like, you know, and this is like, I think a regulatory thing, which I don't necessarily agree with, is like they've allowed, you know, more and more, yeah, kind of off-premise bottle shops and things, which is, you know, yeah, like, you know, people are doing business, I guess, but it's just like, they keep letting these things sort of open, and they're open, you know, I mean, albeit thankfully they've kind of capped them to 11 o'clock at night and stuff. But, you know, yeah, like you know, there was one little independent bottle shop, say on Brunswick Street, you know, for a really long time. And now there's like still that one little independent bottle shop. And then there's like, you know, a couple of supermarkets that sell booze. There's a Liquorland now. And then there's other, you know, more mid-level chains like, you know, that like Black Heart and Sparrow or whatever, like bottle shop.
McCoppins and stuff like
that. Yeah, you know, like, and yeah, well, McCoppins has always kind of been there, but I guess it was sort of, you know, again, that little bit out of the way. You're not necessarily like, the issue that I've had with like, you know, stores like Liquorland, say, is like it's quite close to the corner of Brunswick Street and Johnson Street. It's open till 11 at night. You know, people will get out of a taxi or whatever, like, or an Uber on Brunswick Street, walk in there, grab a few drinks, wander down Brunswick Street and suss out what's going on.
Yeah.
And have kind of, yeah, like preloaded on the first couple of rounds of drinks that they were going to have for the night before they even set foot in a venue.
That's right. But look, to be honest, that's nothing new, because even before I was going for dollar pots at the depot, we'd still have a few beers at home or on the train or whatever. It's not anything new.
So I guess that's probably like either like maybe that shift is either that they're doing that at home, then they're doing it at a bottle shop when they get to the area that they're going out.
But $15 a pint, man.
Or you know? Just that like people just don't necessarily like have the, you know, the drinking skills anymore. You know, like I think we've like, we're a long way away from some of the amounts of alcohol, I guess, that our generation like would consume when they went out. You know, and it wasn't really like, it's sort of almost perceived as problematic now, you know, that like if you're going to go out and like, you know, the thought of like going out with like a crew of mates and like going through like, you know, the equivalent of like several slabs of beer or like several bottles of spirits or whatever with like 4 to 8 to 12 people, like that, like if you said that to a, like, you know, someone that's like 18 or 19 now, oh, me and my like 7 mates went out and we had like, went through 3 bottles of Jack and, you know, a couple of slabs of beer, like people will be like, that, you've got an alcohol problem.
Yeah. But I tell you another factor, and I don't want to bring it all back to social media, but I
Yeah.
think this definitely plays a part here, because when we were younger, there wasn't camera phones, there wasn't this stuff. Now, you now could get really pissed, fall over, fall in the gutter, pass out somewhere.
Yeah.
Everyone's put on Snapchat, it's on Instagram, you look like a goose.
True.
So I think kids are more probably savvy of that stuff.
I think that perception thing's definitely like a big part of it. And I think the other part of that sort of follows in with social media stuff and like people trying to, like have these Instagrammable kind of moments or TikTok moments during the night is also like a factor that probably plays in a lot that most of us don't think about is also just transit, you know, like we would typically like go out and you'd go to like, you probably wouldn't go to much more than like, you might go to like 2 venues in a night, maybe 3 at a stretch. You know, I remember like, you know, the Goo Days kind of thing. You might have gone to like the Canada Hotel or something and then sat out in the beer garden that was like essentially a bottle shop that had tables and chairs and you pay bottle shop prices and sit there and have a couple of drinks.
Yep.
And then you might walk just straight into the Metro, or you might have like gone via the Art House or something because there was some bands playing there and then gone to the Metro. But you weren't ever really going to more than like 2 to 3 venues a night. You might go to like, you know, the Art House and watch bands, and then you'd go out to like
you had a destination
or something later on. Yeah, you'd be going to a club later, or you go to a show. You'd be, or if you were just going to these clubs, like you'd just be there all night. You weren't going like to like, you know, one venue and staying there for 45 minutes and then going to another club and like going to 3 or 4 venues in like a night, you know, which is really common now.
But because people, the kids have snap maps and everything.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking Steve-O's down the road. We'll go there. Or that chick, you know, she's here. So they are doing that because they see everyone's proximity.
100%.
So it's all about the connection thing.
It definitely is. And we're definitely seeing a lot of like, I know in the like the club space, that Laundry still operates partially in, you know, it's just like, we're seeing a lot of just, like people will be like, they'll be there for a while and they'll go to chapel and they'll come back, or they'll go into the city for a while and they'll come back and speaking again to like staff or security from some of those venues, they're seeing the exact same thing. You know, people are like in their venue, then they'll go over to another venue, then they go back there later and stuff.
And that's something I've seen you've taken on board with like letting people in with pass outs from other venues.
Yeah. Well, that was something that we came up with the other week where we were just like, well, we'll just be like...
Have you put in place yet?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
How's it worked?
Look, you know, it's just the beginning of it and we'll just see what happens with it. But I guess like that was kind of back to that, like Laundry has always been a bit like, you know, as a personality of a venue being a bit kind of cheeky or smart-assy, and we're kind of just like, oh, you know, you're going somewhere else and it's a bit shit, like, come hang out with us. Like, don't worry about paying again, you know? Like, we just, like, want people in the room and, like, want people to have fun, you know? Like, but it's, like, it's something that I'm definitely seeing is, like, probably, though, being more unique to that kind of club space because, like, it's not really as much of an issue, say, at Bad Decisions where, like, it's more people are going there for a destination, for an event, or they're like coming to hang out at the bar, and it's kind of like more of the culture in there is like, there's this, again, like it all comes back to this community thing. Like it's just like that venue, Bad Decisions, has got more of a community around it. Like, you know, we're doing a lot of like hip hop stuff and electronic music stuff and heavy music bands and things, and like the bands and the rappers and the people that go to see them like will come early and hang out there, or they'll like come there before they go and see like if they're into hip hop before they see a gig at Laundry because they're familiar with the venue. And they'll come there when there's nothing on, and like you know, or like after shows are finished because they've been somewhere else and they just like the
and that's what
venue.
It's about, building a community.
Yeah,
in any capacity, whatever you're doing, you want to have that because a business can't survive now. It's like people start these clothing labels or whatever, and then like no one buys it because you just can't start something from scratch. You've got to build the community. You know. That's the biggest part of any business, I think. You need to have brand advocates, people that support what you do. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Man, we've been speaking now for 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Man, it's been a great chat. Do you want to let people know what they can do if they want to get down to laundry, what's coming up, anything else? And also, we don't want to end on it. We've touched on some pessimistic stuff.
Yeah.
But it's a good industry. You've done well out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Look, it's been like great. I mean, like it's really funny, like when you're like in it, I guess, like you just like kind of don't. It's like when people go through, like, probably to put it in perspective for like a lot of just general people that aren't around some of these things, like, it's like when people go on a weight loss journey, and like they're like going to the gym or going running or going for walks, and you're like, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere, and then you see a mate you haven't seen for a few weeks, and they're just like, oh wow, you've like lost heaps of weight, like that's really cool.
Validation moment, yeah.
It's that validation moment. Something that we don't see a lot. You're just getting through every day and getting through every event and show and every weekend, and like you're always looking like 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks ahead to try and kind of, keep ahead of things.
Have a moment to pinch yourself.
You have that moment, like, so it's just like, it's good to like, have that and, reflect on that. But yeah, it's been like an amazing like journey and ride, and like, we've done some really cool things, and, we'll continue to do that, and, continue to like give a platform for like, artists at like that sort of, 80 to 100 cap, space at Bad Decisions, and then like, up to 350 at Laundry. And like, we've like, gone on a really big campaign, I guess, in the last like 6 months, particularly with Laundry. We're just really like, diversifying now, and like we're working with a lot of different promoters, different genres, and, we've like,
For a while, you were all in-house as well.
We were, yeah. And like we were doing that, and we were just, we're just hip hop, and I guess like, it's the nature of the beast at the moment. And I think if you don't pivot and like, diversify and like kind of do other things, like there's just not enough market in any, thing,
Not enough meat on the bone.
100%. And it's like, it's cool, like, look, don't get me wrong. Like I have moments, like, I had a moment a few weeks ago where I stood there and I was just like, what am I doing? I'm like, I got like techno playing in like 3 different rooms across 2 venues, and I don't even really like techno that much.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, but then we've got like, thriving kind of businesses in a world that like other venues are like, like struggling and closing and stuff at the moment. Now seem to be, kind of like holding their own, and, we are selling out stuff, and we're selling out, band gigs, and like, we're doing a lot of stuff, we're working a lot with the Destroyer Lines guys at the moment, and, like some of their stuff's, like selling really well. And, we're being able to like pivot and shift things around, and we're moving like, even some of our in-house events, we've got one of those that's like, started at Bads, that's like built up to a point where it's like, it's sold out the Bad Decision space, 3 events in a row now, and like the next one after the one that's on this weekend will be at Laundry in a bigger space with some bigger acts on it and stuff like that. So,
For sure.
We're being able to do that and shift things backwards and forwards, and, create some really cool experiences, like I was away on the weekend, but, some of the footage I saw come out of like the Young Martyr show at Bad Decisions was just like insane, like, and just, I can imagine like, the energy that would have been there and stuff, and to, again, see that venue that's a fairly new venue, like selling out 3 shows out of 4 in a week,
You're doing something
like,
right.
It's solid,
Anything else on the horizon? Any sort of new venues? Anything you want to tell people about?
Look, I'm not sure yet. We'll just see where things go.
Never say never?
Yeah, never say never. Like, I think there's like definitely potential to take Bad Decisions into other cities as a concept.
Yep. You couldn't be at both places though, man. You'd struggle with that, I think.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely...
You're a hands-on person with that stuff.
Yeah. I would definitely spend a lot of time on aeroplanes.
If
I went and opened a Bad Decisions in Brisbane or something like that. But, we'll see. Look, we'll just see what happens. And, like we've got some really good people in place, and a really strong team at the moment sitting behind what people see.
Yep.
So, yeah, look, nothing's ever off the table.
For sure. And obviously, the audience that we've got, a small audience, but it is pretty hip-hop focused. So if people do have album launches, single launches, fucking whatever they're doing, you guys aren't scared to accommodate
not at
rappers, DJs, all that sort of stuff.
Not at all, at either venue, at any level. And, we've literally, Laundry's done everything from, you know, like things that people outside of the hip hop world know, you know, like the 360 Cursor battle and things like that, you know, and that's so much stuff that, you know, like that venue's got so much history, you know, we didn't even get a chance to sort of touch on.
No, we can still talk about that. But yeah,
no, it's like,
I wouldn't even know where to begin when we talk about the acts. You've done so much.
It's crazy. Like at one point I made like a list and it was just like, it just went on and on. And it wasn't even like, and this is like no offense to like, you know, intended to like smaller artists, like, I didn't even get to the point of like touching on anyone that was like, you know, below, you know, like a Brad Strutt, Posse Shot sort of, you know, 350 cap level, you know, like we didn't even get to that point and the list was already like, you know. My biggest
DJing, like accomplishment, if you could even call it that, was at Laundry, and I got to support Z-Trip.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one that you'd never think of because that's down the list. But to me, I'm like, one day it was me and Leroy and we got to support Z-Trip. So that to me, and there's probably a lot of people that have similar stories.
Oh, 100%. There definitely would be. And that's like always something that we've always tried to do and like give that opportunity to like, you know, and that platform to artists and like try and keep like bringing people up on things, you know, and like keep, you know, like that lower like support level open on shows for, you know, like people that are like kind of, you know, doing things and like doing cool shit. And,
for sure.
You know,
you actually give a fuck about the scene and the culture, and that's what's important. And I think a lot of other people that have these spaces, they're like, oh, let the hip hop guys do whatever, but you actually care about it, care about the culture, and you want to give it a platform.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And that's like across the board, you know, with all music, you know, like we just want to like see people do cool things, you know, like, and that, you know, in turn, like makes for, you know, good business and builds communities and like, you know, means longevity, you know, like, you know, no one else is probably like, I can't think of any other venue that's pulled off, you know, what say Laundry has, you know, like, and stayed pretty genre specific for like such a long period of time. And then even like those, like the club nights that we were running there on Friday and Saturdays that, you know, are still kind of running.
For sure. Like
no one ever ran a club night for a decade.
No.
You know, like
I think to give props to Cherry Bar's changed locations and changed owners, but they've stayed specific to them. And you can kind of almost put that on a comparable level. But yeah, obviously you're what you're saying is true. Yeah. All right, Dave, thanks, man. I appreciate you coming down, and we could talk for fucking a long time because we haven't even scraped the surface.
Yeah.
But, man, I appreciate it. I'd love you to come back again one day where we can talk about the other 5,000 artists you've had there.
For sure.
Thanks for coming, man. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
3,000.